Good evening. I call this November 4th meeting to order. Welcome to our meeting tonight. We have a few items to consider tonight, but before we do that, I'd like for us to consider the minutes from the October 7th Planning Commission meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion has been made, properly seconded. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries. The items we're going to consider tonight will be presented to council if they are forwarded on November the 15th. We are recommending body, so the council makes the final decision. So come back. See mostly the applicants in the audience. So I know you'll be back on November the 15th. First item is MP-21-07/C-LUP-21-04/Z-21-09/V-21-23 Empire Communities /KB 400 Partners, and Michael is going to be presenting.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. The first item before you is a master plan amendment, comprehensive land use plan amendment, rezoning, and variance to allow for the construction of 90 for-sale single-family detached homes on 14 acres. The proposed density is 6.44 dwelling units per acre. And I have the location map on the overhead. The property is located at the southwest corner of North Point Parkway and Kimball Bridge Road.
We don't have that map yet on the screen.
Oh. There we go.
All right, we got it.
The applicant is requesting a master plan amendment to the KB 400 Partners Master Plan, Pod A, to add dwelling for sale detached to the list of permitted uses. Rezoning is requested from office institutional and special use to R8A/D. And there's a comprehensive land use plan amendment from corporate office and public institution education to high density residential. There are variances being requested to modify the North Point overlay site design and streetscape standards, reduce setbacks and lot widths, eliminate block requirements and vehicle cross access, eliminate minimum driveway spacing, and to allow a stream buffer encroachment for the new entry road off of Rock Mill Road. This property is undeveloped property. It's wooded, has an unusual shape, and has road frontage on 3 sides. Surrounding properties are zoned O&I, office institutional, except the property to the south is special use. Non-residential uses surround the property, including Verizon to the north, Royal 400 South Office Park to the east, North Point Park office condos to the west, the future Adora Daycare, you just considered that recently, to the southwest, and the New Prospect Elementary School to the south. KB 400 master plan was approved in 1999. It's the total master plan is about 27 acres along North Point Parkway, allowing office, freestanding restaurant, and freestanding bank. As you probably recall, the city's received several public hearing requests on this property, some that have come before this board, and some that have not made it to actual public hearings. Past public comments that we received on this opposed any direct access from North Point Parkway or Kimball Bridge Road. So there was land that was acquired from the adjacent elementary school to allow access to the property from Rock Mill Road. Previous proposals that we've seen on this property have consisted of both single-family detached and townhomes. Property is located within the North Point overlay, so this is the eastern extent of the North Point overlay, which, as you probably recall, that we have a vision to become a walkable mixed-use village with a focus on sustainability, green space, and connectivity. The applicant identifies the existence of floodplain, stream buffers, sewer easements, and site topography as hardships justifying the requested variances. And specific to the applicant's request for the lot width reduction, they provided a townhome plan. I'll show that here in just a few. And the purpose of the townhome plan, because they are proposing all detached, was to show that with townhomes, they could actually get 111 units, which would be an increase over what they're asking for of 21 additional units. So they're just trying to show that they're not actually getting an increase in density with that variance. This is the applicant's site plan. This is the 90-lot single-family detached home site plan, showing access from Rock Mill Road, no access to North Point Parkway or Kimball Bridge Road. This is just a fire-only access that will be, for fire only, be shut off at all times, only available for fire. Lots are internally oriented on this site plan. Previous site plans have lined homes up on North Point Parkway and even on Kimball Bridge Road. This plan includes buffers all the way around the property. The home footprints are 22 by 38 feet. The average lot size is 2,025 square feet. Lots 1 through 48 are front entry, and lots 49 through 90 are rear entry homes. All the new internal streets and alleys will be private. There is, in addition to that fire access, there's a sidewalk connection that would connect the development out to the sidewalk along Kimball Bridge Road. 8-foot sidewalks are depicted up on both roads, and 5-foot sidewalk is provided along at least one side of the new internal streets. Our parking regulations in the overlay would require 216 parking spaces for the 90 homes. Each home is shown to have 2 parking spaces within a garage, 2 parking spaces in a driveway, for a total of 360 spaces. And the applicant proposed an additional 25 guest spaces throughout the development. Of course, the overlay has a focus on providing additional open space, green space. So the overlay requires a total of 15% open space, or 2.1 acres. The site plan that the applicant that is before you shows 6.53 acres of open space, or 47%. Civic space depicted at the corner of North Point and Kimball Bridge Road. Actually, I have a better exhibit to show. Actually, just going back to the buffering of the streets, the applicant actually provided this plan. This is from North Point Parkway and Kimball Bridge Road, just showing that the houses actually sit a little bit lower than the road, and there'll be a significant buffer between the homes and the road. On this plan, the green reflects civic space, and the pink or red areas reflect amenity space. As I mentioned, you have the corner civic space. That will include the applicant's eco-district monument concepts. And they provided 2 options, 2 concepts. They have homes that front 2 amenity spaces in this location. And then there's there's a clubhouse at this location with a pool. And there is a landscape park in this area. This represents the stream, the boundary of the stream down here. So there are some buffers here that, with a trail system that comes through the landscape park. Stormwater management area is located here up towards North Point Parkway. Of course, buffering and tree save in this location so that would not be seen from North Point Parkway. You can see the tree line that they've shown on the site plan. So the idea would be that trees would be saved in that general area. These also represent additional tree saves within that landscape park. This is the applicant's renderings that they provided. They show first floor with brick, and then the second and third floors with board and batten. They are showing architectural detailing on all four sides. And this is I forgot to mention, this is their rear entry model. And that would be the front entry model. Of course, in the North Point overlay, there's a requirement of 7 eco-district points, of which the applicant is proposing a total of 11. They consist of building energy efficiency, bioretention, and sustainable landscaping, enhanced bicycle amenities, and additional landscape civic space. And I believe Eric has a presentation on traffic.
The project has an expected trip generation of 92 vehicle trip ends during the PM peak hour. Access will be onto Rock Mill Road and continuing on to Rock Mill towards the intersection at Haynesbridge Road, where the trips will diverge north and south along North Point and then continue forward on towards Haynesbridge Road on Rock Mill Road. The applicant engaged A&R Engineering to perform a traffic impact assessment. Based on the assumptions within the study, the existing street network has sufficient capacity to accommodate the development trips with no improvements. Due to concerns presented by the adjacent business owners, the Public Works did go out and take a look at the signal timing at Rock Mill and Haynesbridge Road and adjusted the timings to provide more green time for the Rock Mill Road folks to get out onto the main roadways. That's my traffic there.
Thanks, Eric. So this was shown to the public at the September 8th Community Zoning Information Meeting. There were several public comments, including just a variety of comments included concerns over stream impacts, look at the development price point, whether a cut-through is planned adjacent to the school, school and traffic impacts, high density, safety issues for children. There were questions about the meaning of civic space, since that's open to the public, what the targeted buyer was. A lot of questions from Kimball Farms with regard to, I think some of Kimball Farms is outside that 500-foot distance, so there was some that were not notified. Discussion of some of their flooding issues, impacts to school enrollment, and just some concerns about the gathering areas, whether those were indoor or outdoor, whether they were subject to the city's noise ordinance, and how they would be used. City also received some comments in opposition to the request from some nearby business owners. As Eric mentioned, they were primarily over concerns over increased traffic on Rock Mill Road and the capacity of Rock Mill Road and North Point Parkway intersection to handle the added traffic. Staff looked at the various review criteria associated with the applicant's request and found the proposal is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the North Point overlay that promote a walkable mixed-use environment in the North Point area, which will bring people closer to where they work and shop. The proposal should not adversely affect the natural environment, and residential use should produce significantly fewer vehicular trips on the surrounding roadway network. This property is approved under the master plan for, I believe, over 250 square feet of office. So the residential use would produce fewer trips. With respect to the requested variances, the property has an unusual shape. It does have multiple road frontages, and it is encumbered by a perennial stream buffers, and floodplain. And again, I mentioned that the applicant provided the townhome plan showing 111 units. That's the townhome plan that's shown on the property, and that again is to justify and show that they're not really asking for increased density based on that variance. ordinance. With that, staff is recommending approval of the applicant's request, subject to several conditions. Condition 1 is the site plan specific condition, showing that the property, just under 14-acre property, should be zoned RA/D, subject to the PEC site plan revised date 10/26/21. 2, the comprehensive land use plan designation of the property shall be high-density residential. 3, dwelling for sale detached shall be limited or listed as a permitted use in the KB 400 Master Plan Pod A with a maximum density of 6.44 dwelling units per acre. 4, minimum lot width shall be 30 feet. 5, building setbacks and building separation shall be as depicted on the site plan prepared by PEC revised 10/26/21. Condition 6 deals with the architecture and materials, limiting to the renderings prepared by Troy King, labeled Exhibit A, subject to final approval by staff. Condition 7 limits to the eco-district measures that were identified in the applicant's letter of intent dated 7/30/21. Condition 8 requires a minimum 5,000 square foot civic space at the corner of North Point Parkway and Kimball Bridge with the Empire North Point Eco District monument concepts. Final approval of those by the Cultural Arts Commission. Condition 9 limits to the open space depicted on the site plan, and that the HOA shall be responsible for maintenance of the open space. Condition 10 deals with the stormwater management facility. Condition 11 requires that privacy fences and unfinished wood decks not be visible from the public right-of-way. 12 requires the pedestrian access to Kimball Bridge Road sidewalk being unrestricted. 13 deals with that fire access only, requiring it to be gated and improved with grasscrete or similar product. 14, homes shall have connectivity to the public sidewalk system. 15, new internal streets shall include a 4-foot planter, 5-foot sidewalk on one side of the street, as approved by staff, and requiring decorative lighting throughout. Of course, internal streets will be private and maintained by the HOA. Condition 16 deals with the North Point Parkway streetscape, requiring a 3-foot planter and 8-foot sidewalk. 3-foot planter isn't quite large enough to accommodate the street trees, so we have specific conditions in there to get an additional 1 foot of space into that 8-foot sidewalk, accommodated with tree grates or alternative option. 17 discusses the Kimball Bridge Road streetscape. That streetscape has been recently upgraded by the city's project. Specifically, this condition deals with the street trees. The city is looking at potentially putting street trees in that location, so if not installed, that condition would apply if not installed by the city. Condition 18 deals with the landscape buffers. There's a 20-foot landscape buffer along Kimball Bridge Road and 30-foot landscape buffer along North Point Parkway, requiring that existing trees be preserved where possible within the buffer and then upgraded to buffer standards. Also have language in there requiring the HOA maintenance of that landscape buffer. Condition 19, minimum 10-foot landscape strip shall be required along both sides of new internal streets. There is a recent problem that we've identified through our land development team with Fulton County. Fulton County does not want an unrestricted easement. Typically, it's where we want our landscape strips. So I believe the applicant does have a change to that we are agreeable to, but we'll allow the applicant to address their changes. 20, pedestrian amenities, including pathways, lighting, and benches, should be included throughout the development and amenity areas. 21, required frontage improvements along Kimball Bridge and North Point Parkway shall include elements of the proposed city improvements, impact fee credits being available for work beyond site boundaries and for dedication of right-of-way. Condition 22, developer shall construct in the depicted Rockmill Road access driveway to city road standards. All costs of construction shall be the responsibility of the developer. and then goes on to talk about the streetscape for that access road, as well as tree recompense not being required for that development activity. 23, developer shall dedicate a permanent public easement over the area depicted as civic space that's open to the public. 24, removing exotic and invasive trees and shrubs within the stream buffer is approved by staff. Typical condition when you have on-site stream buffers. 25, tree line and trees depicted in the civic area to the west of the new project driveway shall be saved, except for that trees shown to be impacted by the new driveway may be removed. 26, site plan shall comply with IFC Appendix D, that's the fire marshal's comment. And 27, no more than 10% of the residential units shall be permitted to be rented as recorded in the HOA's declarations and covenants. Conditions 28, 29, and 30 are requested by the applicant. 28 is a condition specifically dealing with stormwater runoff. This has been reviewed by our stormwater engineer, and she is agreeable to these terms. This would actually require more than what the city would require. And this is in response to the applicant meeting with, I believe, the Kimball Farms neighborhood. As I mentioned earlier, they have some flooding issues. I assume that this is to address those. Condition 29, developer will work with the city's transportation department to create a right turn lane at the northbound exit of Rock Mill Road onto North Point Parkway to the extent that there is available right-of-way to construct the turn lane. This improvement shall not be eligible for impact fee credits. And condition 30, if a land disturbance permit is not applied for within 12 months of council approval of the rezoning, the zoning of the property shall revert to the original zoning subject to the original KB 400 Partners Pod A development standards. And that concludes the presentation. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you for your comprehensive presentation. I have a few questions, and I will start with the conditions. We have a hard copy of the applicant's response. Can you identify the ones you or staff agree with and those that you don't? So when we go through the conditions, we would only focus on those that there is disagreement.
Sure. So we're generally in agreement with a lot of the changes that the applicant is asking for. I'll just go through them one by one. Condition 1, we're agreeable to that change. Condition 8, we're agreeable to that change. 10, we agree with that change. 11, we agree to the change. 13, we agree to the change. 18, we do not agree to the change being requested. However, I do believe that we could come up with language that we would be agreeable to. Same thing on condition 19. That specifically deals with that Fulton County easement that has become troublesome. And Eric does have some information on that should you have any questions about that. I just think that we need some better language for 19. We are agreeable to the change to 22. We would be agreeable to the change to 25 if we can add as approved by staff to the last sentence. We would not be agreeable to the change to 29. We believe that improvement, Eric, I don't want to speak for you, but I believe that Eric believes that that intersection functions at an acceptable level of service, and that the proposal for the right turn lane there is really to address some concerns that we received from the business owners off of Rock Mill Road. So that improvement would not be eligible for impact fee credits. And we would be agreeable to the change to 30.
A significant agreement on the conditions. Now, going back to, and I'll stay with the conditions just for a moment, condition number 8. This is a condition requested by the residents. '28. Citizen comments.
Yes, 28, 29, and 30 that those conditions were requested by the applicant as a result of their meeting with the surrounding residents and business owners.
This actually restricts flow by, I would assume, about 17–18% of what it would be, so that's more stringent than the cities. I'm saying it's a good thing.
Yes, that's what our stormwater
The
engineer had
applicant
said.
confirmed it's about 17–18% reduction, which is good. I don't see that level of restriction, so that's a good addition. The other thing I was going to ask, I noticed where two lots are within the floodplain, is that the 100-year floodplain line that's actually crossing through one? One of them is halfway, the other is total within the floodplain.
I would defer to the applicant on that. They did provide this exhibit
Yeah.
showing that.
The two at the very bottom are the ones impacted, and I'd assume that's a 100-year floodplain.
Yeah, our stormwater engineer also noted that, and there were comments that were provided to the applicant on that. They would have to address that particular situation to compensate for where they would be raising the floodplain.
Okay, and the last one is related to traffic onto Rock Bridge and North Point Parkway. I think, Eric, you addressed the timing adjustment. You don't have any concerns regarding backups, sufficient storage with all these units added at peak hour?
No, even during the peak hour, the signal should operate at level service C or better, so it should provide plenty of capacity at that intersection.
What about on Rock Mill Road? I'd assume most people would be turning right.
Yeah, the neighborhood is really, there's few enough cars there that's not really going to be a problem with the amount of cars that are presently on Rock Mill Road. So there will not be a problem at that intersection either.
Okay, those are my only questions for now. Any other questions for?
I had a real quick one. This might be a little ahead of things, but in looking at the configuration of the entrance and the private roads themselves, what, if anything, would be the thought about school bus service and how school buses would access any stops inside the neighborhood?
Most often, the school bus will go to the neighborhood front, and there is Rock Mill Road does have a turnaround prior to the businesses at the end of the roadway.
Oh, I will call for public comments. At that time, you can approach and make comments. Thank you.
Michael, I had a question. In the citizen comments, they had a concern over a traffic light and traffic at Rock Mill Road and Kimball Bridge Road. So they had said that it's a problem now. Did I miss that, or has that been addressed by staff? And also they said in there that in 2018, this was approved for 56 homes and now 90 homes, and it actually was denied, according to the citizens' comment. Is any of that correct?
The only action that was taken on this property was in 2015 application. There was a denial by council on this property. That original request was for 37 townhomes and 50 single-family detached homes. The request that was before council at that time was pared down to 62 single-family detached homes. So that is correct that there was a denial on the property.
But then that was in 2015, not 2018?
There was not, there was a request in 2018. It was pulled at the city council meeting. It was never acted on by council.
What about the traffic? The question that I saw several times in the citizen comments were about the traffic at Rock Mill and Kimball Bridge. Is that been addressed?
So that's what Eric was mentioning earlier. There was some issues with the when this was brought up as part of this application by the business owners at Atlantis Place, which is the office development just on the south end of Rock Mill Road. Erickson asked Public Works to go out to that location. They did adjust the signal timing, and it did make some improvements. And Eric, maybe you want to address that. I don't want to go into those details.
Yes, they did go back and reduce the cycle length of the signal, and so that the level of service of the signal should be a level service C or better, which is really good, during a peak hour compared to a lot of the signals in the city. Over on Rock Mill at Kimball Bridge, that's where the school and the park is. The city has just recently installed a roundabout at that intersection, so that should have and widened the roadway on, with one lane down Kimball Bridge Road up to Waters Road. So that traffic should be much better, or in the process of getting better with the completion of that construction project.
And level C is post this development or current?
Both. So
It's going to remain C.
it's going to remain C even after this development, yes.
Understood.
What was the date that y'all adjusted that, the signal?
I do not recall. It was about 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Well,
Okay, so it's recent. I just wondered from the,
their CZIM was in September, which means the application was submitted to us on August 1st or the very beginning of August. It was shortly after the application was submitted that we started receiving some comments from the business owners. And I gave those to Eric fairly quickly. And I think you got Public Works out there fairly quickly after. It would have been an August, September timeframe. I think it was addressed by the time we had the actual CZIM, if I recall.
I had a question too about condition 13 for fire access. Is that for emergency vehicles also, or only fire? So ambulances and things of that nature?
I know it's definitely for fire. I don't know that EMS, I assume EMS could actually access that, but I don't know 100%. I know it specifically was a fire
Since it was
comment.
gated, I just
Yes.
wondered what that looked like.
There would be a Knox box there that the fire department would have the code for.
And then who handles the maintenance on that,
Of that,
the access road?
that would be the HOA's responsibility.
Okay.
One follow-up question to that on number 13. Have not recalled seeing that type of entrance. Is that commonly done in Alpharetta?
This is, with this application, this is the first time I've seen it on this particular request. Because I noticed it immediately because of the opposition to any kind of access from Kimball Bridge in North Point Parkway. Eric, do you have any information on that? I think it may be due to the number of homes and the only having the one access here. Maybe that was why the firemen.
It was also due to because there's, it's a bridge over a floodplain, so if during a significant storm event, that would provide an emergency access point for whoever would need emergency access. We've done that in other subdivisions that had only one way in, one way out type of situation.
Any other questions? All right, no further questions at this time. Of course, the board can ask questions at any time. We're going to ask the applicant to come forward and make a presentation.
I'm going to let you drive. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. I'm Kathy Zickert with Smith Gambrell. you're all healthy. I am representing Empire tonight on both applications, and on this particular one, I think Michael did an excellent job of doing an overview of the project and a lot of the project details. So I did have a slideshow prepared to share with you, but I'm probably going to skip over parts of it simply because he did a sufficient job, and we don't all need to be here till midnight if we could avoid that. So the first slide up is, of course, generally where the property is located. The one thing I would want to point out while we're looking at this aerial photo, Mr. Perkins, there is no connection from the rock mill on this side of the property to the rock mill on Kimball Bridge. They're separated. So the circle that is on Kimball Bridge with rock mill coming into it doesn't feed this part of rock mill at all. There's no connection in between. So I don't think that this project, given that we are not putting any traffic out onto Kimball Bridge, will have any impact on that particular new improvement. I just wanted to make that clear because I wasn't sure whether that was perhaps what you were explaining. I also want to stop on this slide for a moment, and with all due respect to Michael, and God knows they have enough work that it would get complicated trying to remember everything. I think the first one was withdrawn. I don't think it was denied. I think at the last moment there were changes in the conditions that were offered up at the city council, and rather than going forward at the last minute and on the fly, the applicant said, well, let's step back, we'll start over on this, and it was withdrawn. So there's actually nothing that's been approved on this site, which is why we have to amend the actual master plan for the Cousins project, which is the 235,000 square feet of space. This is the third application I am familiar with. I'm sort of like a covenant. I stay with the property. And the first one was, in fact, 54 detached homes, very, very small lots. And the most important feature of that one, which was objectionable, I think, to staff, is that there was full access onto North Point Parkway. There was no access onto Rock Mill because there was no place to put it. And there was access onto Kimball Bridge as well. Subsequent to that point in time, and in fact during the 2018 process where there was one group that tried again, we acquired about 1.5, almost 2 acres from the adjacent school site, so that not only is this property larger than what was before you before, it also enabled us to restrict our curb cut exclusively to Rock Mill Road with the emergency access to Kimball Bridge only. So we were trying to address the concerns that related to traffic in terms of getting onto North Point Parkway and Kimball Bridge Road. We will be happy to allow EMS to use that as well as the fire department. So when I do go through the conditions, I'll be happy to add that in if you would like me to do that. Next slide, please. This gives you a real good idea of exactly what we added. The portion of the site, which is sort of the lower part, is what we acquired from the school board. I think we actually did that with the city's assistance. It was it took a year to get that all worked out, but we were able to do it, and that's what enables us to come forward at this point in time with that connection. Next slide, please. I want to tell you a little bit about Empire. I know that they have developed in Alpharetta before, and I suspect you are familiar with some of their product, Midwick over on Thompson being one of the projects that they've developed, which I think is lovely. But they are not just an Alpharetta nor North Fulton developer. They've developed all over, both Metro Atlanta and internally to Atlanta. And their product, they try to vary to match the jurisdiction that they're in. So what you will see in an Alpharetta project is not what you're going to see in, say, a Kirkwood project. It's going to be very much tied to the architectural style, the cultural feel, and whatever the design standards are of a particular community. But those are our active communities, upcoming communities, and completed communities. We also have one at Halcyon you may be familiar with. It's the two that are probably most proximate to this site. So I did want you to be aware of what the Empire approach is. They are based out of Canada and have been doing a great job in terms of their development all across the country, but particularly in the Southeast, more particularly in Atlanta. Next slide. This gives you an idea of the kind of, well, one of them's attached, but mostly detached products that this particular developer does. And the one in the middle of the bottom is, in fact, Midwick. So if you are not familiar with that on Thompson, if you were to drive over there, that's exactly what you would see. You will note the varying architectural styles in terms of the architectural trim, the windows, the accent points on the eaves, and the attention to porches, which I think is a really pleasant thing to have. Halcyon is on the upper left, a completely different product, again, emphasizing what I just told you, that we do try and tailor to whatever we're in. So that will give you an idea of exactly what that is. Next slide, please. Just an artist rendering of the way we want this to look. Unlike the prior projects on this site, we do not want to be visible from North Point or Kimball Bridge. We really envision taking advantage of the topo on this site, which drops from both sides a fairly significant amount, as was indicated in the cross-section that you were shown by Michael. So we want to be protective of what is in here and create buffers and actually screen from the noise on North Point Parkway as well as on Kimball Bridge. We think that makes a more effective community. Next slide, please. Thank you. All right, this is our site plan, and it does show you some of the features that we think make this project really compelling. For starters, we have two 16,000 square foot pocket parks, I guess I'd call them, or community greens, whatever you want to call them, in between the townhome units. And those units face on those greens. So there are path systems, there is a fire pit, there's grills, et cetera, to focus those alley-fed units on that green space within the middle of the 2 points of the plan where they are shown. Additionally, we are in fact trying to create a substantially usable open space in terms of civic space with outside the floodplain, but still in that general vicinity. We will use a boardwalk to create a trail there so that we are not disturbing floodplain in that circumstance. If there are any disturbances of floodplain due to either stormwater management design or the road or the units, then we understand that we are required to account for that with a no-rise certificate at the completion of the construction. It's actually a myth that you cannot develop in floodplain. You can, so long as you do it correctly. And we acknowledge that that obligation is incumbent upon us and happy to provide that, and will be required to provide that by the staff. You will notice also that we have a pool in this project. None of the other developments that were proposed, whether withdrawn or what have you, had that kind of an amenity. We think it's an important amenity for a family-based project, and that to some degree is driving our density, because you cannot afford to maintain a pool nor these common internal green spaces without a sufficient homeowners association dues, and you don't want it to be so high that it becomes a disincentive to buy in there. We are thinking this is going to be family-focused, and as a consequence, that amenity is also important to us. And believe me, folks, if I could come in here and ask for fewer units, I'm not stupid. I would do that in a New York minute, but I can't. And we do think that this is a piece of property that, as a step-down property, probably really should be a townhome community, but we're not. We're trying to keep it single-family detached as a better protection for what is to the other side of us from this point of the North Point Parkway, which is still part of the Eco District. Next slide, please. This is what the property is zoned for at present. I think Mike mentioned that we basically have a 211,315 square foot office space allowed, way more AM, PM trips, and also way more daily trips. And more importantly, there were exits contemplated on North Point Parkway and on Kimball Bridge, which was a source of not exactly appreciation when this master plan was approved, and it remains, I think, a concern of the community. Next slide, please. These are the same elevations that Mike showed you, so I'll skip over them. Same again. Same again. Those are the cross sections he showed you. Skip those. He showed you, stop. Stop for one moment. In the corner at North Point Parkway and Kimball Bridge, there is a civic space, and I'll talk about the size of that in a moment, but that's where this feature would go. This property originally, when I first started working on it, was bisected by the Eco District the overlay district. And one of the things we were willing to do before is to bring it into the district. And when that project didn't move forward, the city went ahead and did that on its own, which is appropriate since you don't want a property split. So now this particular property is actually the gateway piece, along with the one across North Point, for entrance into the Eco District. So we were asked to derive some kind of environmentally sensitive entrance treatment that would recognize the existence of the Eco District. And this is one of our efforts to do that. The second one Mike also showed you, but we'll just pull it up. And these reflect different sizes of walls, and we're willing to do what the city wants us to do, but we want to make this an area where it would be a gathering spot and would be a real feature welcoming you into the community. Next slide, please. What's that one in there for? Oh, that's the townhome community that he showed you, sorry. And that's the 111-unit plan. We probably could have gotten more than that, quite frankly, but I do understand that the number seems to be perhaps higher than it should be, but the point of all this is that if it was developed as a townhome community, which I think it very probably could be, you could do a whole lot more than what we're asking to do. We have, in fact, pared it to the minimum. Next. This shows you, I want to stop on this slide for a moment because the corner at North Point and Kimball Bridge is where that Eco District signage is supposed to go and where the civic space will be. I suspect in the end the civic space will not only be on our property but will also be on city right-of-way and is subject to their approval. But we're perfectly willing to make those improvements on the city right-of-way to the extent it is acceptable to the city to make it as big as it possibly can be. I also want to point out that although we have listed minimums on our site plan in reference to open space and civic space, in actuality, we could have claimed a whole lot more. For example, you can claim the backyards. You can claim front yards. There's a lot of things that you can claim as open space that we haven't. So we are well in excess of even what is on our plan here of what is required. And only 5% of the space and 10%, 5% is supposed to be amenity space and 10% is supposed to be civic. We have 18% of the site as amenity space and 32% as civic space. So we have exceeded what is required by a long shot, in some instances almost 3 times, or actually more than 3 times. Next slide. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is go through these conditions and indicate, Mike was very helpful in indicating to you which ones are acceptable to him, so I am going to try and address the ones you had questions about, as well as why we're seeking the relief that we're seeking in the ones that we haven't yet quite worked through. So the first one that I have on that would relate to number 13, and part of that, Ms. Davis, was your request about EMX access, which we're perfectly happy to add if you want to make it fire and EMS and police, for that matter, access. That would be perfectly acceptable to us. It is not unusual to use pervious pavements on these kinds of exits. I can't remember who asked that question, but the reason that it's done that way is it's not something you're going to be using every day because it is emergency access, and you try to make it a pervious surface so that it will act as something that will receive water and absorb it as opposed to it running off of it. So that is not an unusual feature on a number of subdivisions. And I'm not sure technically this one is required by the number of units. I think it's something that we just thought was a good idea. I could be wrong on that, but I don't believe that's the case. So we were fine until down to number 18. And let me tell you what's motivating us there. What the staff recommended was that all the landscape buffers that surround the property be put in their own lot and maintained by the homeowners association. And the reason we can't do that is that in some instances, these buffers are in backyards. So we would be cutting off the yard of the resident and putting it into a buffer and thereby making the lot real small, and also thereby making it somewhat more difficult to market because there are a lot of people who would prefer to know that what is behind them is what they own. But what we do need you to understand is that this is going to be a somewhat unusual single-family detached community. All of the exterior space, all of the landscaping, all of the green space, all of the open space, the detention pond, the exit for the emergency purposes, the corner entrance treatment, all of it will be maintained by an HOA. So we have asked for a change to simply require that all the landscape buffers be maintained by the HOA as a requirement of covenants and restrictions on the property, instead of separating them out of the lots. End result is exactly the same, and I'm with Michael on this one. I think we can just tweak the language and work towards a resolution of that. And if you don't want to do that up there now, which I don't blame you a bit, perhaps you could give some direction about subject to, we may be able to tweak it on that one. The same thing is true on number 19. Apparently, Fulton County is in direct opposition to what Alpharetta wants in terms of where it wants its sewer and water lines. Fulton County, and they're the ones that provide those services, want the lines almost as close to the street as they can get them, because it is easier to maintain that way, whereas if you pull it back, it begins to look like it's in somebody's yard. It's much more of a difficult thing to deal with in terms of pulling them up and maintaining them if necessary. So Fulton County has started saying no to these, and I think the city acknowledges that if Fulton County says no, then we can't do it. So that's another one that maybe the language needs to be tweaked on, and you could note that. But that's the reason for the language change there. In terms of, let's see, where did I go next? I think 26. Again, we're agreeable to the staff change on that one, which was as approved by staff to be added to the last paragraph. So I believe that makes that acceptable as well. At the CCIM meeting, we had a great many comments, largely from Kimball Farms, and we also had comments, not necessarily at the CCIM, but by way of emails and telephone calls from some of the property owners who own the businesses that are further down Rock Hill. There's an office building, and there's also low-rise, what I would call condominium-type office buildings. And we heard from several people back there, and the specific nature of their objection was not traffic per se, but the inability to exit Rock Mill Road with a right-hand turning movement. So down where the daycare center was, that is one lane. And the signal was such that if people were waiting to turn left, for example, it queued up. So the theory that we were requested to consider is, if we can get the right-of-way, or if the daycare center would cooperate, we would be interested in creating a right-hand turn lane, and we would be. We're fine with doing that. The only reason we're in any disagreement at all about that is that we think that should qualify for impact fee dollars, since it is off of our property and it is something that's been requested of us. The stormwater runoff rates, after the CCIM meeting, we went to Kimball Farms and said, we would like to meet with as many of your members as you would like. The folks who were at the CCIM meeting, for the most part, not surprisingly, were the ones who were there. And their biggest single concern was that there is now water running off of this property that comes down Rock Mill Road, goes directly into a detention pond in the Kimball Farms community, and floods. So that condition that the chairman noted is actually a whole lot more stringent than what the city would ordinarily require, is something that we agreed to in response to those concerns, and I believe that the vast majority of that association now supports us. So we're real pleased that we were able to do that. And then the last one you said was okay, the number 30 with the option of the developer or the landowner. We are asking, we need to add the language at the option of the developer or landowner. If a land disturbance permit is not secured within 24 months, then they can revert. And the reason for that is that the current property owner wants to be protected should something develop where this developer does not close, that they can start over and that they're not held to this site plan. But this language would require it to come back before you for a public hearing before it could revert. And the reason I changed 12 months to 24 months is that given general supply issues and delays that we've all seen since the pandemic, we want to make sure that we have sufficient time to do all the work that is necessary to submit for an LDP. And in other reversion clauses that I've seen in this city, and I've seen a few, the 24-month period has been pretty standard. So with that, I think my remarks are concluded. I have with me today our transportation engineer, who is happy to answer any traffic questions that you might have. I have with us our engineer par excellence, Ken Wood from PEC. And I also have some architectural experts here who can discuss architecture if you want to get into the details concerning it. So we tried to bring you the people we thought might be able to answer your questions that wouldn't be me. And with that said, I'll be happy to answer any questions that I can.
I want to make sure I heard you right. Did you say you're like a covenant? It stays with the
Yes,
property?
I go with the property, so yes, whoever owns it next
Looks
gets me.
like. I do remember the 2015 and the 2018 applications.
2018, we pulled. We never ended up, we went to CCIM. The developer got hit by COVID. There were lots of personnel changes. It just never went anywhere, so it got pulled.
I do remember that. Okay, any questions for the applicant? Well, you must have done a very good job.
Thank you.
We'll probably have some follow-up questions on the conditions that we just addressed.
Actually, Francis, can I ask just one?
Yes, you
I
can.
noticed in the property, there's like 5 or 6 different bike amenities.
Yeah.
It seems significant. Almost more
I think
bike
there's
locks
only
than
one.
parking spots.
We've got bike racks throughout the community, but the amenity, can you put that, can you put that back up, the last one?
I've just never seen so many in any of the projects we've seen.
Well, you know what? Your echo points are tied to how, that you're supposed to provide more than one. So bike racks, storage areas, service of bikes, that kind of thing, you don't get the points unless you do it all. So that's the reason for it.
Okay.
But the only, in the CCIM meeting, and I don't know if you were online or not, questions were raised about whether there was a retail bike store at the entrance on, or the exit onto Kimball Bridge, and there was some confusion that perhaps we would be selling bikes, tires, and the like. That is not the case. This is simply a convenient place for people to put air in their tires. There will be some tools kept there so you can perhaps ratchet your tire back on. If I'm not mistaken, you have some of these in public parks now.
We do.
And it's not a bike shop. Just wanted to make sure you were aware.
I
of
hadn't
that.
seen that yet come up, so that's why I asked.
Well, now that you opened up questions, I have one. What is your experience with permeable pavers?
It depends on the quality. If there isn't a whole lot of use of them, they work very, very well. So for an emergency circumstance such as this one, they tend to hold up. They're not being parked on all the time, so they're not crumbling, and they work just fine. They can't be used just anywhere. A lot of times you'll see them in the outskirts of parking lots of big malls and the like, again, under the theory that they will be not used repeatedly and regularly. But under those circumstances, then the experience can be very good.
I think that's a very good point about the use of them, because they don't work in certain circumstances,
Right.
especially with high traffic. All right, I
Oh,
think,
I have one more.
okay.
I believe this property, and I walked it, I couldn't really tell because I couldn't get in the school, but is there a fence somewhere on the school property? Usually they're fenced, but it's not included in your proposal, but do you know if the fence, the
I
school?
don't know if there's one there now.
Yeah,
Apparently there may be a chain link one.
okay. I couldn't see it.
We do want to have some kind of a pedestrian connection to the school site for school kids so that they can go down the hill as opposed to come out and walk up the driveway, so they don't have to come out on public roads. So if there is a fence, we would like to open it up at that point, although there is also a pedestrian exit onto Kimball Bridge, so school-age children could go out there, turn right, and get to the school off Kimball Bridge. Rock Mill might be safer, frankly, but in any event, we're trying to create that connection, but there is apparently a chain link fence now.
Okay.
Any other questions? None at this time. I'm going to open the meeting for public comments. Anyone in favor, please come forward. Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. My name's Keith Hamilton. I live at 810 Mashburn Drive, which is in the Kimball Farms subdivision. I'm also on the board of the Condo Association Board on Charleston Gate.
Can you shift to your left? So, yes.
Sir, do you want to repeat your address for the record, please?
810 Mashburn Drive.
Perfect, thank you.
So at Charleston Gate, I'm on the board of directors, and everybody on the board of directors is against this property being turned residential. Back in 2007 is when I purchased my property, 2008 is when
Are you speaking in favor or against?
against
I
residential.
asked for those in favor, but since you are here, you can go ahead and speak.
Sorry, I was in the back.
All right.
In 2007, I was presented a plan from the people that were developing this same property. We're going to develop into condominiums, office condos. They said they had access onto North Point Parkway, and they said they knew somebody at the DOT who was going to put a light in. I mentioned that to share with you that Rock Mill Road was never intended to take this kind of traffic when it was put in. You look at Rock Mill Road, they have a bridge over the tributary. There's no sidewalk on the right side of that road. They never intended to use this when they put it in, right? So when we come back to the light, the issue at the light, like I said, I've been there for 15 years. The daycare was approved, wasn't it, to put the daycare in at the bank? I used to bank at that bank before they closed, and the tellers would tell me that we have to be very careful walking out to our cars because people jump the light and come through our parking lot. These are tellers, and we're going to put a daycare in there now. You look across the street, and on the other side of Rock Mill Road, they have right turn lanes in and out. That would be very good, no matter what you put in there, no matter what is put into this property, now that they've pushed the access onto Rock Mill Road. The school bus is an issue. You mentioned the roundabout. That's our roundabout. That's not public roundabout. We don't want a school bus. We don't have the money to pay for the repairs of our parking lot from school buses going through there, 3 or 4 times a day. If you put a residential neighborhood in there, they need to have the ability to service the members of that community, such as the fire. They need to have ability to turn the fire trucks around and get around in and out, and school buses. If they're worried about floodplains and fire trucks, why aren't they worried about floodplains and flooding and school buses? Now, we talk about, they mentioned having access to New Prospect Elementary. Rock Mill Road has been abandoned by the city. There is no access unless they're going to go right up and knock a hole in the fence, unless they're going to come through our property. We as owners, business owners, we're not prepared to take on that liability of people walking through our property that's not developed. It's really just runoff area. There's no safe access from spiders, snakes, poison oak. There's nothing there for people to access that. That's a concern for us, is to have this additional liability of people coming through our property, little kids, to get to school, walking to school. I'm interested to know how the 10% rent clause will be monitored and enforced. I can pull up Airbnb and I can find rooms for rent for a night in that area. I don't know how they're going to do that. What's going to be the penalty? Who's going to take that on? And hardship. They mentioned hardship on the property. Again, this property hasn't changed. This property hasn't changed at all. When I looked at it in 2007, it's still the same. So when you step into this property, you knew there was a hardship there when you got into the project. So in that regard, I don't think that there should be a hardship granted for this. We are the first property downstream when the floods come. I mean, we're right behind it all, behind all the traffic that's going to come in and out. We're the first one downstream. I mean, past Kimball Farms, people are past us, where the water flows. So that's a concern for us because, Hurricane Harvey in Houston, people thought they had the full floodplain monitored, taken care of as well, and that didn't work out well for them. Those are my questions and comments. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. We'll allow the applicant to respond in just a moment. Anyone else wants to speak in favor or against? Seeing no one, I'm going to close public comments and ask the applicants whether you'd like to respond to those comments. You have time for rebuttal.
I think there's someone in support too, though.
They didn't come up.
Oh, different project. Never mind. I meant to do that.
All right. Yes, you are.
Keep my mind on. The gentleman who just spoke, we are fully aware of his objections to this application and have spent, I don't know how many times, trying to call, email, and contact him to discuss his concerns to see what we could resolve them. He actually has a medical office in those low-rise office condos. Apparently, he also lives in Kimball Farms. He was not part of the meeting that the president of Kimball Farms held, at which we attended, and which he expressed support for this project and that they would not oppose it. So with all due respect to him, I don't think he's speaking on behalf of the Kimball Farms Homeowners Association. But in reference to his issues, and I understand what the concern would be, no, Rock Mill Road, which is, by the way, public right-of-way, even though a portion of it has been developed, it is a public road. No, Rock Mill was not designed to accommodate office building traffic from 211,000 square feet of office, which is what could be built here at this point. And you could seek permission to use Rock Mill at this point for that use without rezoning the property. It's just a matter of getting it approved. So I think in terms of trying to compare what the impacts might be, I don't know why you'd want to keep it zoned office under any circumstances when you could dramatically reduce traffic impacts by converting it to a residential property. The problem at the intersection, as I explained, is that there is a hard time turning right. Left turns make it, straight across, North Point makes it, it's the right turn, and that's why I think when it was a bank property, the bank was complaining about people cutting through that parking lot in lieu of a right turn lane. I bet that a daycare center would be equally concerned, if not more so, about cut-through traffic through its parking lot. And we are also reaching out to the owner of that property to see if he will cooperate with us in doing that right turn movement. So we're perfectly willing to do what we need to do to help address that problem. And I think that we should be able to do that. The issue of a school bus coming down Rock Mill, there is a roundabout, which is a public roundabout that was designed to city specs. And one would assume that any kind of street, public street designed to city specs could handle a school bus in the morning and a school bus in the afternoon on Rock Mill Road. If that is a genuine concern, however, if you would like us to seek permission for the kids to get on the bus on Kimball Bridge, if there can be a stop there, happy to do it. If you want us to have the kids come out to North Point Parkway, happy to do it. We are connecting by way of pedestrian connection so the children don't have to get on a bus who are going to that school. So I'm not sure that that's the group that we are likely to impact by that. But to the extent that we can move a bus stop and alleviate that concern, although I don't believe it's particularly a significant one, we will be happy to do that. There is no cut through Kimball Farms. I want to make this very clear. This gentleman may live in Kimball Farms, and they do have concerns about runoff, but this does not attach by way of road. And I think a lot of people were of that opinion during the CCIM meeting. And when we finally took the plans out there in the site plan and demonstrated that, no, we are not trying to connect to you traffic-wise. We are not trying to connect to you anywhere. We're not trying to connect a sidewalk to you for people to walk through you to get to us. That fear seemed to be assuaged. In terms of the 10% rent clause and how you enforce it, I have the exact same, first of all, it's standard provision in Alpharetta because we don't want all these communities to convert to rental properties. Second, I have personal knowledge living in a townhome community myself where only 10% can be rented. By heavens, that HOA enforces that very, very assiduously. They know exactly who's living there and who isn't. They know they don't want their community to turn into a rental community, and there are no more than 10% of us at any given time who can actually rent their units. So you're trying to strike a balance between helping a homeowner who needs to move and needs to rent in order to get out and until they can sell the unit, and by at the same time trying to protect the community, and it has worked in Alpharetta in the past. What we did agree with Kimball Bridge, as the gentleman just suggested, was to reduce flooding, and that was a significant issue to them, and an acknowledged significant issue, a legitimate concern, and we are improving that circumstance enormously, not just because we're developing, but over the current condition. So we actually think we will be offering up a benefit to Kimball Farms as opposed to creating any kind of flooding detriment.
Would you speak to or compare the level of stormwater runoff with the current zoning to the new one?
No,
Because there is significant impervious
might be able to.
cover with the current zoning. I think he understands the question I'm asking.
Hey, Kenneth Wood, 350 Research Court. And so comparing what it is currently zoned today to what it is what we're proposing, was that the question?
Correct.
Yeah, so the existing zoning right now with the 213,000 square feet, when I looked at the site plan, it was about 85 to 90% impervious. It only had the little bit down in the floodplain, and that brought it down to about, roughly 75%. And so 75% being impervious on the site and running off without any green space was very significant. And then when we looked at our site, we're roughly about 35% impervious when you total it all up, just over 40%. And so it's just under half in terms of a reduction from it. And so when we met with the neighborhood, there was a lot of discussion about the downstream pipes, the downstream channel, and what we're going to be able to do to make an impact. And so we know that, we have the upstream basin that comes through the site right now, and that there's a lot of upstream water. And so what we talked with them about is that we needed to make a positive difference. And how could we kind of put our money where our mouth is to and show you that we can make a positive difference. And so what we did is we know we have to do water quality for the site and runoff reduction, and so we're going to have green infrastructure within those green space areas upland. And then as it comes down, we have pond areas to where we can attach ponds, paver areas to where we can infiltrate, and then also do runoff reduction. And so between all of that, what we came up with is being able to show that we'll reduce the previous year's storm. And so that zoning condition that we added toward the end of the application, that was a response for us to show them that not only are we going to compare this as a wooded site, but we're also going to show you that we're going to go above and beyond and reduce it even further. And so we did that after looking at the existing zoning and what it was, and then what that was. And then we needed to alleviate that fear and show that we were going to do that in a condition.
Well, I like condition 28.
Yes, that one. Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? All right, I'll turn this over to the board for a discussion and/or a motion. Having seen the previous ones, and I know what transpired, I don't remember exactly what was proposed, but I do remember what happened. This is a significant improvement from that, what we saw, and it seems like there is a commitment by the applicant by actually buying additional land to stay away from Kimball and North Point in terms of ingress. So I think this is a much better package than what we have seen in the past. One of the things we have to deal with in terms of the conditions is condition 19, that language, and the other conditions, and I'll let the board deal with that as we go through the discussion.
I have a question for Aaron, just really quickly. Can you confirm the roundabout? I mean, we have somebody saying that it's kind of public property and someone saying it's private. Can you just confirm, what is it?
Our records show up being, from our mapping shows it being public.
A public, okay, thank you.
I can confirm that tomorrow, but this hadn't come up previously. But
Okay,
based on the mapping that we have, it appears to be public.
all right.
And Michael, I have one follow-up question, sorry. Just wanted to double check. So we state in number 1, similar to the plans as presented, but they would still need to go to Design Review Board, correct? The palette is a little different than we've seen before from the color choices of the buildings, so they would go before Design Review Board before finalizing all that, correct?
You're talking about the architecture and the renderings of the homes? So that would be a staff approval. So
Okay.
outside of the downtown, residential typically is staff, and commercial development typically goes to DRB. So it is a staff approval of the architecture and materials.
Okay.
Michael, while you're there, I have a question. So on condition number 29, you struck eligible for impact fee credits. And I just want to understand your reasoning behind that, because it kind of sounds like they're doing it because that is what that area wants outside what they themselves control. Limited number of cars that are going through there. My son actually works in that area. I know exactly where that is. Does have an issue, and when I've gone over there, it is a little bit. So I'm just questioning why the burden is going on to the applicant when that is something that is an improvement for all.
So we do have an impact fee ordinance, and that ordinance describes what qualifies for impact fee credits. And so a project has to be on our capital improvement plan, or it has to be a system improvement, and this project is not on either of those. So it does not qualify under our impact fee ordinance.
For a waiver?
Correct, Eric? Yes.
Okay.
You said by definition has to be an improvement. So it doesn't qualify by identification or definition. Is that what you meant? You
Correct.
said? Okay.
So it's more of a complaint, not really a,
Yeah, and as Eric had mentioned earlier, the intersection is functioning at an acceptable level. I definitely understand we hear the concerns with respect to that, and we have no problem with the developer making that improvement should they be able to talk to the daycare center to acquire the additional right-of-way and do the improvement. I don't think there's any objection from staff for that. It's just that it doesn't qualify for the impact fee credits under the ordinance.
okay. Are you going to require, though, that they do that, though?
We're not, there's nothing here that we're not objecting to 29 as only the impact fee credit.
Okay.
So if they would like to do the improvement, we're fine with that.
This applicant requested conditions.
Correct. Yeah.
You didn't ask them to do it.
Yeah. I did write some language real quickly on condition with respect to condition 18 and 19, if you are interested.
Sure.
And I haven't shared that with the applicant, so that they would probably need to consider that as well. Because I think that we're pretty close on those two. With respect to condition number 18, just striking that last sentence altogether, we would support a change to that last sentence that would read, landscape buffers shall be shown on the final plat with maintenance responsibility assigned to the HOA. And then we would also want to include another sentence, landscape buffers shall be detailed in the HOA declaration and covenants as maintenance responsibility by the HOA. That's condition 18. So those two sentences would replace the current last sentence in 18. I have separate language for 19.
We're amenable to that change.
To be shown on the final plat with maintenance responsibility by the HOA, that's the first sentence.
And then the second sentence that I'd propose for 18 and final sentence would be landscape buffers shall be detailed in the HOA declaration and covenants as the responsibility of the HOA, maintenance responsibility of the HOA. We just want to make sure that homeowners understand that the buffer is in place for a reason and that you just can't go and remove the trees in that buffer for things that you would typically put in your backyard.
And the applicant is agreeable to that change,
Yes, sir.
unless the board has any addition to that.
Could you slowly go through that last sentence?
Sure.
Landscape buffers shall be detailed on,
In the HOA
Declaration.
declarations and covenants as the maintenance responsibility of the HOA.
Michael, what's your response to 19? I'm sorry, to 19.
On 19, again, here, we do understand that there's this recent issue that's come up on the land development side with Fulton County and their easements in our landscape strips. So what we would suggest there is we would keep the beginning of that sentence, so it would read, minimum 10-foot landscape strip shall be required along both sides of new internal streets, not including alleys, except if Fulton County requires an unencumbered easement, shrubs shall replace tree requirements on one side of the street. I did confirm with Eric that Fulton County would accept shrubs in that area.
Yeah.
All right, I like that.
Yeah.
It's full agreement.
Good job.
And I believe the approved by staff on condition number 25 is acceptable to the applicant. We are still in discussion and motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve MP-21-07/C-21-4/Z-21-09/V-21-23 KB 400 Partners Empire Communities, subject to the following conditions. I'm going to need some help on one of these at the end because I did not get this. Subject to the following conditions as noted by staff and approving the applicant's markups on item number 1, as noted by the applicant, item number 8, item number 10, item number 11, item number 13, with the word to follow, fire access and police only shall be gated. So with the word police inserted. Number 18 in the applicant's markup, to add as a last sentence, shown on final plat with the maintenance assigned to the homeowners association.
I think we replaced the whole thing with 2 sentences.
There's additional on that.
Oh,
Landscape buffer shall be detailed in the homeowners association covenant and homeowners assigned maintenance responsibility of the buffer. Was that correct, Michael?
I would suggest
Close?
referring to the language that was added by staff, because Michael has it, and I believe it's on record.
We have it over here, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So on number 19, I also am recommending approval of that, but I did not get Michael's language, so all right, so adopted by Michael, okay. On number 22, approve as applicant's markup. Number 25, approve applicant's markup as noted. Number 28, approve applicant addition as noted. No on number 29, and that would be as staff recommended. And approve number 30 with the applicant's markup as noted by applicant.
I have well, before I do that, we need to have a second, if there is one.
I'll second
Second.
you addressing 25.
Yeah, once it's seconded, it's now
I'll
a
second.
motion. It's been properly seconded. Now, any further discussion?
I have a friendly amendment. Can I do that? I can't remember which one it was, I'm sorry. Can you just say, instead of police and fire, just say emergency vehicles? EMS, I mean, unless you want to add them all, just say emergency vehicles, and then that would include police, fire, EMS, sheriff's department.
Number 13?
The one about access.
Number 13.
Number 13.
If I understand you correctly, you just want to change fire to emergency access only.
Yeah, to emergency vehicle access only.
I will add that. So rather than fire access, it will be emergency access only.
Emergency vehicle.
Emergency vehicle access only. That's number 13.
Did you include as approved by staff at the end of condition 25?
I did note that approved as, that's actually as applicant marked. That had been, Jim,
As approved by staff at
It
the
wasn't-
end of
Yeah,
condition.
it wasn't on our sheet, so it needs to be noted as approved by staff at the end of the last sentence.
oh, but that's correct. I did not add that. So that should be on item number 25.
Correct.
Should stormwater management require removal of some of these trees, then trees recompense shall be provided as per code as approved by staff.
And those are amendments, and they've been accepted by you, and thank you.
Yes.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries unanimously. It goes before City Council on November the 15th. That has taken an hour and a half. Does the board want to take a break or go to the next item? We'll take a 5-minute break,
Right.
and then we'll go to the second item. Thank you. An hour and a half. As long as we come mentally prepared. All right, I think everyone is back. We're going to go to the second item. The second item on the agenda is Z-21-08/CU-21-11, Mayfair on Main /217 South Main Street, and Ms. Kathy Cook will present.
This item may look a little bit familiar because it was actually here in September. And back in September, they had a 1.83 acres, and then it changed to 2.3 acres. So that will have to come back through the process because when you add additional land, it does need the zoning for the residential. So it looks familiar. It's just a little bit different from the September hearing, which required this property to come back. And just to show you real quick what that looks like, this is the plan that you saw previously. And this piece right here, which was mostly leftover right-of-way from the DeVore Road extension, they were able to actually acquire that. So the property now includes that about a half-acre piece here. So that has been added to the site plan, and that's why it's back before you. So it looks like the same, but it's a little bit different from what you saw in September. So it's a new public hearing. With this application, 217 Main is requesting a rezoning and a conditional use to allow for the construction of 13 for-sale single-family detached homes and 11 for-sale townhomes on 2.3 acres in the downtown. Rezoning is requested from C2 to DTMU, and a conditional use is requested to increase the residential density from 10 dwelling units per acre to 10.43 dwelling units per acre, so a little bit different density also than what was previously requested, lower density. The properties were previously developed and used for a strip center and a dance school. I showed some pictures just to remind you of what that property looks like now. So this was the dance school that's on the Roswell Road side. And then, of course, the old buildings that were located on the front, but those have been demolished. That's the Main Street area. Surrounding properties are zoned C2 to the north, west, and south, and DTMU to the east, which is the Maxwell development. The Dairy Queen and a professional office are located to the north. Their Maxwell development's located to the east. And the new DeVore Road right-of-way will be located to the south, and 2 flex office buildings are located to the west. And the comprehensive land use plan designation for the property is mixed use, which does allow for a residential component as they've been requesting. And I'll put the new site plan up here. We also included a table that shows the different zoning, residential zonings that have been approved in the downtown, as well as the density. And overall, 377 single-family detached homes and 300 townhomes have been approved in the downtown in the 6 years since the adoption of the 2015 Downtown Master Plan. The proposed density of 10.43 dwelling units per acre is on the high end of densities. It does require a conditional use, and it is on the high end of what's been approved in the downtown, but it is similar to the approved Maxwell, which is across the street, which was 10.7 dwelling units per acre. The plan does depict 24 three-story dwelling units, of which 13 are now for-sale single-family detached homes. For the previous submittal was only townhomes, and this includes 11 townhomes within 3 buildings. All single-family detached lots meet the 2,500 square foot minimum lot size, and all of the townhome units are nearly double the 900 square foot minimum lot size. Access to the development is from the secondary street, Roswell Street. They do have a 10-foot sidewalk depicted along South Main Street, and an 8-foot sidewalk is depicted on Roswell Street. They're only showing a 5-foot, it looks like, on DeVore. However, we will require within our conditions that that be an 8-foot sidewalk. And one thing you'll hear from the applicant is that they're calling that the Alpha Loop. While it is a connection from the sections of the Alpha Loop, we haven't designated that. So they are asking for impact fee credits to build that section. However, we're not going to recommend impact fee credits be given for that 8-foot sidewalk because actually the downtown stipulates that it's up to the transportation engineer, and that could be as great as 10-foot in width. So we're not recommending impact fees for the sidewalk construction. They do meet the required parking. They also have the required 18-foot driveways. The site plan depicts 41% amenity space within the proposed development, which includes a central amenity located near the guest parking. This application does save a specimen tree that's located along Roswell Street. That was a tree that was found to be in good condition by the city arborist and was recommended as a good tree save along Roswell Street. They also submitted renderings of the proposal, and these are the same renderings that you saw previously. And that would be for the townhome elevations. They haven't developed the single-family detached elevation, so you'll have a mix of the detached and the attached within the development. And this would be a development that's required to go through the design review board. So final elevations will be required to go through the design review board because it's located within the downtown. We did get comments from our architect that's our consultant, our city's downtown consultant. They had several different comments. Of course, those comments would go to the design review board for their consideration when they're looking at the final elevations. And then also, we have some comments from Eric regarding the traffic and the road, the DeVore Road project, and I guess to give us an update. And I'll go ahead and put the map of that plan up here if you want to talk about the traffic.
Sure. Just to remind everybody that Georgia State DOT is working on a project along Highway 9. The project is removing the
Project's here.
The project is removing the skewed intersection. I'm going to do this real quick.
Through here.
The project's removing the existing skewed intersection at Highway 9 and Maxwell Road, and they're creating two new signalized intersections that are correcting that with better geometry. One is at the new DeVore Road intersection with Highway 9, where DeVore Road has been realigned to go between the new Maxwell development and the Bank of America building.
It'll be through here.
And then there's a second signalized intersection where the existing Maxwell Road will tie into what used to be the Amana School parking lot there. So that will create two signalized intersections versus the one really horrible skewed intersection. So that's been on the city's books and wish list for a long time and was incorporated to the DOT project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and it does terminate, the DeVore Road realignment does terminate over at Roswell Street with a mini roundabout. So you'll have some traffic calming at that location too, and allow people who want to continue over to Highway 9 do that at a roundabout.
And also, this shows the old site plan, so of course, you know, the new site plan does take this corner piece, this remnant piece. And that kind of shows how that ties in. And here you can see the Alpha Loop, the existing Alpha Loop, and it will end at Main Street. And this is one type of connection for the Alpha Loop that would get over to Wills Park, because there is a plan within Wills Park to bring a trail through the park. Also, schools, we always check with Fulton County, of course, to see what type of school enrollment the project would generate. And they did come back and tell us it could be anywhere from 0 to 14 school-age children with this proposal. We reviewed the applicant's proposal and found that the request for rezoning and conditional use is not in conflict with the established review criteria. The zoning proposal is consistent with the vision of the downtown master plan and comprehensive land use plan designation of the property, and the density is similar, but below the maximum density that was approved on South Main Street at the Maxwell. And based on staff feedback, the applicant did go back and revise their request to include the tree save that the arborist had found to be a good tree save. We are recommending approval, and they did go through the citizen participation plan, and they stated that there were no comments received. Our recommendation with approval comes with several conditions. Number one, approximately 2.3 acres shall be zoned DTMU and developed substantially similar to the site plan prepared by Paradigm dated 10/13/2021, except for modifications required to comply with the conditions below. Lot yield depicted is not guaranteed and subject to meeting all city code requirements and conditions of zoning. Two is a condition regarding the architecture and materials. 3, density shall not exceed 10.43 dwelling units per acre and shall be limited to 13 single-family detached homes and 11 townhome units as depicted. 4, building height shall be limited to no more than 3 stories with rooftop deck and no more than 44 feet as depicted on the submitted renderings. And 5, lots shall have a front yard defined by a courtyard as depicted in the submitted renderings. Courtyards can encroach into the landscape strips as depicted on the site plan prepared by Paradigm dated 10/13/2021, subject to meeting the minimum landscape material requirements as approved by staff. Sizing and impervious area to be coordinated with staff. 6, that deals with the developer dedicating needed right-of-way on Roswell Street and building the required sidewalk. 7, requirements for DeVore as well as the sidewalk. 8, new internal street shall be constructed as depicted on the site plan prepared by Paradigm dated 10/13/2021 with final approval by staff. 9, landscape strips along South Main Street, DeVore Road, and Roswell Street shall be planted with shade trees as a continuation of what has been planted or designed in the downtown and outside of utility easements and overhead utilities as approved by staff. 10, project entrance shall include a decorative paver, apron, landscaping, and low wall. 11 deals with the requirements for the amenity areas. 12, creeping vines shall be planted to cover retaining and low walls as approved by staff. 13, the tree save. 14, 5-foot landscape strips along the north and south property lines shall be planted with evergreens. 15, the fences. 16, screening of the HVAC. 17, fire access shall meet IFC 2018 Appendix D and fire hydrants. 18, stormwater management facilities shall be provided on an independent lot and shall not impede access to homes. Final approval by staff. 19, garbage pickup shall be from within the development. And 20, no more than 10% of the residential units shall be permitted to be rented as recorded in the HOA's declarations and covenants. And that concludes staff presentation. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer those.
Thank you for your presentation. The conditions, we have a hard copy with applicant markup.
Yes.
I know you've already indicated disagreement on the change to condition 7. What about conditions 3, 6, and 16?
3, we're not in agreement with because, they're showing a site plan that's a mix of single-family detached as well as townhomes. So the change would say it could be attached or detached. So since they're already showing, a certain number of single-family detached, we believe they should still have that minimum of the single-family detached. But we're fine if they want to increase the single-family detached, but not decrease. So we're not in agreement with that one. 6, we're in agreement with. We're not in agreement with 7. Or on 16, so this is something that the Design Review Board will look at. I mean, we would be fine with it said shall not be visible from public right-of-way as approved by Design Review Board, because that's something that they look at, and they'll tell them, you know, the intersections that they want to make sure that they can't see, which are the adjacent intersections. And I don't know if the applicant was thinking that they would go farther down Main Street or what the issue was, but that's the intersection and the roadways, adjacent roadways. 16, we would be, as approved by, if they wanted to make a change, HVAC and similar equipment shall not be visible from the public right-of-way as approved by Design Review Board. I don't think that's the condition they want, but they can answer that.
What did you say about condition number 6, that you are in agreement with the applicant's markup on that?
Yes.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Sure.
Okay. So first of all, I was super excited to go back out to this property and see some of the trees that are now being able to be saved. I think that makes a huge difference. But I wasn't sure with this new, I know we discussed it in the last one, so I just want to be, they do meet the parking requirement. I'm assuming that whole area in front of the, what they're calling the amenity space is guest parking. So they do meet that. It wasn't really clear as far.
Yes, they're required to have 60 parking spaces, and the code says 2.5 parking spaces. They have 103 when you
Okay.
start counting the driveways, which you're permitted to count.
Okay.
Kathy, there won't be any curb cut on Highway 9 or anything like that. Everything's inside, right?
Right, just the access is from the secondary road, which is Roswell Street, which will be a private alley from Roswell Street. And so on Devore too, they'll be fronting Devore, pulled up to the Devore. I mean, the elevations will have to front Devore, just like they do on the other public streets with Roswell and Main Street.
Kathy, looking at the design of Roswell Street leading up to the new roundabout, that is not a median, is it? That would force a right in, right out?
Are you talking about here?
Yes.
I guess that's something that would be adjusted to make sure that they had the full access here, because that's their only curb cut.
Yeah, because I think from the previous plan to this plan, it shifted down.
It did.
And so that, I was confused by that too, because so because of the shift down to save the tree and everything else, the exit is now right in that dotted line, which I wasn't sure.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, with how this would function.
Yeah, we definitely work with them so they'd have a left out opportunity and be able to get to the Devore Road intersection.
Any other questions? Well, no further questions in this time. We're going to ask the applicant to come forward and make a presentation.
Good evening. John Boniface, 26 Milton Avenue. Happy to be back. We're very excited. We were excited about the prior site plan. We spent about 4 years trying to figure out how to incorporate that remnant piece. We felt the weight of the new gateway to downtown, obviously with our Maxwell development, knowing that we had 217 that were going to form each kind of pillar of this new entry point. And we had this piece of the remnant of the GDOT taking that seller was difficult and didn't have certainty around the aesthetic or the functionality, because that alpha loop coming through, whatever the ultimate connection looks like, it's important to us on both sides of the street from Maxwell and from 217. So very excited to be able to incorporate that, have some certainty around it, and generally enhance what we understand are the four major concerns of the city. Two from kind of a vision standpoint, and then two from functionality within our development. So the vision of that new entry, solving for that is huge. The remnant piece utilization, knowing that you can now bring confidently pedestrians through there, down the Alpha Loop on in Tools Park. Then the tree save that Kathy spoke about, and obviously the density reducing from 13.3 that got approved before going down to 10.4. So very excited about that, excited the opportunity that gave to introduce a single-family detached product. We incurred, full transparency, about $1 million of acquisition plus improvement cost by adding that remnant piece. So to be able to offset that additional cost with a higher value product of the detached was a win for us to be able to offset that. Green space also, with the 10% required green space, we had 30%, 31% before. Now we're at 41%. Also, what you spoke about, removing the curb cut from Highway 9, putting the full access on Roswell Street. And we've worked with Pond Engineering and GDOT for about 4 years with Maxwell, having to develop that and account for the future improvements, and also with 217. So one of the reasons that we've asked for the condition to not tie exactly how many detached products will have to be delivered is because this condemnation is still kind of going through that process. And so what exactly those lines look like to the inch may require us to collapse some, but we don't know until we work through that full process with GDOT. So we're confident in 24 units, all townhome before, so we obviously are incentivized to deliver as many detached as we can. But if we end up needing to, make all townhomes along DeVore Street, all townhomes along Main Street, and go detached one way or the other way, we just are requesting the flexibility to be able to do that, with you understanding our incentive, obviously, to be as many detached as we can. So that's the thought process behind that comment. We're pleased that we were able to get the feedback from you last time. We were able to get great feedback from staff. We were able to meet with each council member just to understand any and all concerns with this project, with what our plans are. And all the feedback we've gotten from our new plan is that we've been able to address everything that was a concern previously. So we're pleased to present this and look forward to your feedback.
Thank you for your presentation. Any questions for the applicant? None at this time, but the board can always ask a question later.
Sure, thanks.
Going to open this for public comment. Anyone in favor? Seeing none. Anybody in opposition? No one in opposition. I'll turn this over to, do you have anything else you'd like to say?
Good, thank you.
All right, thank you. Turn this over to the board for a motion and or discussion. Are you digesting what you just heard?
I did have, Kathy, on number 7, that was the staff still recommended no approval or no ascension to number 7 of the applicant's markup. Is that right?
Correct. Not in agreement with number 7.
Kathy, with regard to number 3, we just heard the applicant explaining the rationale for not wanting to be tied to precise numbers of types of units. Do you have any further thoughts on that?
Well, we wanted a condition that, basically had those detached homes, since that's something that they're showing, but it's certainly, up to the planning commission if they're okay if it goes to an all townhome development. So we were just trying to put a condition in there to make sure that since they did show detached houses, we had a condition that reflected that. I mean, if you change the condition, they can change it to all townhomes, which may not be an issue for you, but it was us making a recommendation based on this plan.
And I think the concern here is there is no limitation now, which would mean there would be no
Right.
condition. We say it and all.
Right, but they would still have that max density, so it's certainly up to you if you're okay, if they have that flexibility, whether to, have a mix of for sale detached as well as attached, or if you're okay if they develop it with all attached. And that's what the change to the condition would allow.
But either way, they'd be capped at the 24.
Either way, yes.
So if they were to change their mix within the 24 spec, that just needed, the site plan would then go back to staff?
That's correct. It wouldn't have to go back through the process. It just gives them the flexibility. If they want to change it to all townhomes, then they can do that without going back through the process. But they still have a density cap and a number cap.
So can you put 24 single-family detached homes or townhome units?
Well, that's
Or-
what they want.
Oh,
That's what the red lines would give them.
They want and/or, so
they
they
want
have
and/or instead of
mix.
just or.
Yeah, and we just put, since, most of the time when we look at a zoning case, we're putting conditions together that match that particular application and site plan that you're looking at. So in order to do that, we wouldn't agree with that condition because that would be a different site plan than what you're looking at. It wouldn't be a different density, and it's up to the planning commission whether, you really love this plan tonight because it has a detached product. Because if that's one of the reasons, then just know they could come back and change it to all attached and not have that detached product, which may not be an issue. It's just something for you to consider.
Well, Kathy, then, given that we still can't anticipate the outcome of the conversations with GDOT, would it make more sense to say establish a minimum number of single-family detached, like at least, let's say, 9 single-family detached?
Well, we did tell them that we would be okay changing it to a minimum number of single-family detached so that we can make sure that we still have that product, since that's what they're showing is a mix of that product.
And what was that minimum?
And they weren't, well, we just went with the minimum 13, since that's
Oh,
what
okay.
they were. But you could still,
Tweak it down.
so basically, you could have a minimum of 13, or you could, put 20, and then you wouldn't have any townhomes. So we went back to them with a condition basically that would allow them flexibility to do all detached, which of course would decrease their density. But yes, I mean, you could certainly say that, we, at a minimum, we want detached along Main Street. And then
Yeah, I
you'll
think-
have to wait.
I think, I totally respect the issues with the GDOT and knowing that we're not sure what that outcome is. And I really do like the product, and I really love the added trees back. And I think it makes so much more sense as presented. I personally would be, I think if we can have detached on the Highway 9, I would be fine with that, but
So you could do, there shall be,
6.
yeah, at a minimum, there shall be detached product fronting Main Street. And leave it like that. And
I don't want to put them in a box that's so tight that
Yeah, we don't know, I mean, we don't know that.
Yeah, so if the
gonna happen.
detached is something, a product you want to see here, then maybe at a minimum that's required along either, Devore or Main Street, whatever you think.
I was
is
going to say,
important.
correct me if I'm wrong, but the issue is the condemnation along Highway 9, is that correct? So if in fact that's,
If you can approach the microphone, I'd like to hear what you wanted to say.
So it actually happens along Highway 9 and Devore Street.
no,
So what I would be okay if we do 6, because that allows us to either have one, or it gives you frontage on one or the other, but it gives us flexibility of how to achieve that. So if we just said 6 and leave it up to us of how to do it, because we want as many detached as we possibly can, knowing we can never do more than 24. Going to all townhomes is less yield for us revenue-wise. So we want to deliver as many detached as we possibly can. So I'd say if we do 6, that could be all right.
are you amenable, Kathy? Is that something that works with staff?
We're okay with that. We just want to make sure that there's a mix.
Right.
Because that's what's,
I think the mix is important, yeah.
That'd be 25%, 6.
be up to the council. Planning commission.
I mean, I understand it's hard. I don't want to put someone in a box when they don't really know the outcome. And I don't know if there's can you put a pause in it, pending DOT condemnation? I don't know how you do that, but I think trying to come up with something when you don't know what the outcome is difficult.
So what if we tried the wording, shall be at a minimum 6 single-family detached homes and the remainder attached townhomes?
With a maximum of 24.
Maximum of 24, agreed.
Can agree to that.
You would probably leave it with their red lines that they have, and then just add at the end of that, at a minimum, there shall be 6 single-family detached fronting Main Street.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, leave as
Leave
the applicant has it, and then add the minimum of 6.
So just to be clear, though, what you just stated tied them to the Main Street side only.
If that's what the planning commission wants, that's a suggestion that I was giving, that would tie them to the South Main Street.
Yeah.
I would not want to do that.
Oh, you said that you wanted the choice between,
Right.
say,
Yeah, he doesn't know either side of the GDOT
It
result, so.
may make more sense to do it here and pull these, but we would rather them, we actually had a staff comment that suggested making these townhomes and making those.
well, you
so-
could do, at a minimum, there shall be single-family detached fronting one of the public streets.
Yeah, I don't think what we want to
Minimum
get
of-
into is a block of 3 townhouses and 3 detached.
Exactly.
That's not going to.
Yes.
I want to
So they
avoid
would-
that.
They would
So-
have to front that entire street. So
Okay, on,
one street at minimum shall have detached, or you can go ahead, since Roswell only has 2, Roswell Street, they could put one house, so you might as well just name Devore and South Main Street as the either/or.
Could we add language that it's approved by staff to give us flexibility to work together so that we're not putting a randomized,
It would be approved by staff if they add that condition.
I just mean instead of trying to solve for it here in this language?
And I was going to ask you that question, if we just said, leave the language as it is, but add as approved by staff. That means staff has to approve the mix, whatever it is, of the 24.
I think that for 3, it needs to say, if you want a detached product, I think it has to say at a minimum, there shall be a detached product facing either South Main Street or Devore Road.
yeah.
But not a specific number, or do we want to put in there 6?
I don't think you have to put a number, because once we look at that road, we're going to say, okay, they've picked Devore, so however many detached they can
That
get
will
in,
go there.
there's the number, and it'll be a smaller number if they pick South Main Street. So I think that's just their condition with the red lines, and then you add, there shall be, at a minimum, either South Main Street or DeVore Road shall have single-family detached, and you can put as approved by staff.
Without a number.
You don't have to have a number.
That's what I was confirming. Okay.
Yeah, you don't have to, because we're going to make sure anything along that road. So if they come back and they only put 3 and they could have put 7, I mean, it's reduced density, but that would be their choice, and we would be okay with that if it's a reduced density.
Are we all in agreement with that?
Can you just recap where you landed on that?
Would just,
To make
your
sure I
red
follow.
lines, and then at a minimum, one of these roads would have to have single-family detached.
It's been pointed out that perhaps we need to strike the as depicted on the site plan, since that is the point of discussion right now.
I'm sorry, what?
There's the phrase "as depicted on the site plan." What we're talking about right now is a potential
Yes,
change to the
yes,
site plan.
Yes. And you can do that, just, you can remove that and put just the period at the end of the and/or attached townhome units, period, at a minimum. Because the date and the site plan is part of the hearing anyway. So you don't have to do that, you don't have to reference that.
If we'd have come with all townhomes, it would have been, everybody would have loved all townhomes. So just, I don't,
Well, we're looking at the case before us on the site plan and the public hearing that's been before them, so they have to
I understand.
make a decision.
All I'm asking for is the ability to work with staff as we fine tune the LDP set.
Right, and
And
that's
not-
what I had told them, and basically, if detached is something that's important to the planning commission, then that's the way that I would word it. And that's, of course, why we put number 3 that had a detached requirement, but certainly up to the planning commission.
So for clarity, at this point, we're saying accept the applicant's markups, strike as depicted on the site plan prepared by Paradigm, and add with all single-family detached fronting either DeVore or Main as determined by, or as agreed by staff.
I don't think we want to say
That's one-
all, we don't want to say all detached.
I thought you were trying to
You want
shoot
all
for
detached?
something that was
Yes, if the
without a
planning
number.
commission is trying to get a detached on at least fronting one of those roads, that is the condition.
Yeah.
Do we want to say all or just detached? Because all, that means all of them there, then everything else is townhomes? If we say all detached?
All detached, but that would just be fronting one.
DeVore or Main.
DeVore
Okay, so they can still
or
be
South
detached
Main.
in the
Yes,
interior? Okay.
yes.
I just
So
don't-
what you're doing is just saying that one of those roadways would have to have a detached product.
Okay,
But again, they're capped at 24, so even if they change the interior units to detached,
okay.
They still have a density
Yeah.
cap and a number cap,
So that still gets the applicant a fair amount of flexibility,
but it doesn't give them the right to do all townhomes.
right?
Right.
And still creates one presenting side
Right.
as being a single-family detached.
And they understand that you want the right to do all townhomes, but
not,
will be up to the vote. Yeah.
I don't necessarily, I want the right to figure it out
I
together.
understand.
And
as planning commission visually, what I'm concerned about is I don't want choppy, choppy, choppy.
right.
Big, little, all sandwiched in. I think the view from either one of those main streets needs to be consistent and be representative of the plans that we saw tonight as single standalone or a block of townhomes, but I don't want the interconnect, I don't want a variation.
I 100% agree with you. And so as you said, consistent. Can we say any unit type fronting the street will be consistent along that street? And not
I think
say-
I think staff, as written, as approved by staff, they're going to be able to make that best recommendation based on your GDOT results.
Okay, what I heard was that one of them had to be detached. So I'm just saying,
Yes.
instead of saying it had to be one or the other, just say it's got to be consistent along the frontage, whether it be detached or attached.
Yeah, because then you can do both.
Yeah, we want it detached, we want something. We want a variance, not just all townhomes.
Okay.
Or we can just leave it as, well, I mean, I think you're capped at 24, and you're requesting single-family detached homes and/or attached townhome units. And I think we understand the challenges with the GDOT results, and we're trying to give you maximum flexibility by working with staff.
Great.
But I do want to have single-family detached presented in the final product,
On
Agreed.
one of the,
Agreed.
one of the main roads.
on one of the main roads,
Okay.
as depicted in this plan.
Not as depicted, because this.
Well, I mean, it's just like how it looks, the look of this, not
Right,
this will
yeah,
be,
got
but
it.
the look of this, of having that group of detached homes.
Got it.
So we density and occupancy 10.43 units per acre and a minimum of 24 single-family detached homes and/or attached townhome units. And there will be a minimum, the detached units would be on either Devore or Main Street as approved by staff. Are we seeing, I mean, I feel like we made this harder than necessary, but.
The applicant is asking for some more flexibility to be able to do all townhomes. But what I'm hearing from the planning commission is that you want to keep
I was really excited about the single-family product.
Yeah, we are
so
restricting.
that condition would
And my
would
tree.
require one of the streets.
We are restricting the flexibility. All right. Any further discussion? It's unusual to perfect, but we do that a lot with the applicant, but that's fine. We want to make progress. Any further discussion? Motion?
It's yours.
You can do it, Valerie.
First. Make a motion to approve Z-21-08/CU-21-11 Mayfair on Main, 217 South Main Street, subject to the following conditions. And rather than read them all out again, I'll say 1 as presented by staff and unamended. 2 as presented by staff without amendment. 3 to read as follows. Density shall not exceed 10.43 dwelling units per acre and shall be limited to 24 single-family detached homes and/or attached townhome units with all single-family detached fronting either Devore or Main Street as approved by staff. Condition 4, as entered by staff with no amendments, same for 5, 6. Condition number 7, as recorded by staff, not accepting the applicant's markups. Condition 8, as presented by staff, same with conditions 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14, and 15. Condition 16, accepting the applicant's markups with the addition of the words "as approved by the Design Review Board," and accepting conditions 17, 18, 19, and 20 as entered by staff.
Second.
Valerie, can you just clarify? I wanted to make sure I didn't miss this. On number 6, we are agreeing to the presented markups of 4 feet, correct?
That was my understanding. Is that correct? Kathy
Yes,
says
okay.
yes.
Can you repeat number 3?
Number 3 would read, density shall not exceed 10.43 dwelling units per acre and shall be limited to 24 single-family detached homes and/or attached townhome units with all single-family detached fronting either Devore or Main Street as approved by staff.
And a second?
I seconded it.
Oh, you seconded it?
Yep.
Okay. I did understand, maybe I misunderstood, that you wanted a minimum of 6 on condition number 3. Single-family detached.
The discussion is, went around that point several times, and I think the resolution was we couldn't assess a number at this point without further knowledge of what the outcome of the conversations with GDOT.
So we added the as approved by staff to cover that.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries. It will be heard by City Council on Monday, November 15th, 2021. All right. The third item on the agenda is MP-21-09/CLUP-21-05/V-21-25 Cousins Westside Pond A Empire Communities. Michael will be presenting.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. The next item before you is a master plan amendment, comprehensive land use plan amendment, and variances to allow for the construction of 58 single for sale townhome units on 7.35 acres. The proposed density is 7.89 dwelling units per acre. Have the location map on the overhead. The subject property is located at 3000 Hembury Road at the northeast corner of Hembury and Morrison Parkway, also known as Westside Parkway. Master plan amendment is requested to the Cousins Westside Master Plan Pod A to add dwelling for sale attached to the list of permitted uses. A comprehensive land use plan amendment is requested from business, manufacturing, warehousing, light industrial to high-density residential. And variances are requested to modify the North Point overlay site design and streetscape standards, amend block requirements, and modify landscape strip requirements along the new internal street. Property is undeveloped, has road frontage on 2 sides, it's at a corner, and has an unusual shape. It surrounds a city-owned property. This is city-owned right here. That property was used for wetland mitigation, and is primarily floodplain. That floodplain carries over to portions of the applicant's property. This property was previously cleared, I believe it was back in 2008, 2007, 2008 timeframe, cleared and graded in conjunction with an office development known as Next Gen Westside, which was never developed due to the downturn in the economy. Surrounding properties are zoned CUP Community Unit Plan and Light Industrial to the west, Community Unit Plan to the south, Office Institutional to the east, and City of Roswell is located to the north. Non-residential uses surround the property, including a Shell gas station over to the east with to the west with a U-Haul rental. And then there's an undeveloped commercial property. You may recall this property came before you for a liquor store that was ultimately denied by City Council. And then the FedEx shipping facility to the east, and then the North Point Center Research Park to the south, which is office. Cousins Westside Master Plan was approved in 2003. It's 219-acre master plan, mixed-use development allowing office, commercial, hotel, education, assisted senior living, and both for sale and for rent residential. Pod A was approved for office with neighborhood commercial uses. It's important to note that the master plan has not provided the neighborhood commercial as originally proposed, and it's actually mostly been developed with residential. This property is also within the North Point overlay. As I mentioned before, it's got quite an unusual shape. at the corner lot, and the applicant is pointing to the unusual shape of the property, as well as existence of floodplain stream buffers, as well as the site topography. So the property does sit and hold, sits much lower than Hembry and Morrison Parkway. Those are cited as hardships to justify the variances. This is the applicant's site plan. Again, 58-unit townhome development. Access is from Hembry Road. They pushed it as far north or furthest away from the intersection as possible. These townhomes have a similar footprint to the previous applicant's previous request that was heard this evening. It's 22 by 38 footprint. Units 1 through 29 and 53 through 58 are rear entry, and then units 34 through 52 are front entry. The new internal streets and alleys will be private. There's a 50-foot natural buffer along the property where it adjoins City of Roswell. 12-foot sidewalks and 6-foot planters are depicted along Hembry. 12-foot sidewalk and 10-foot planters depicted along Morrison Parkway. The new internal street depicts a 4-foot planter with a 5-foot sidewalk on one side of the street. The city's parking regulations would require 139 parking spaces for the 58 townhome units. That's based on these townhome units being 3 bedrooms each. And each townhome will accommodate 2 spaces within the garage as well as 2 spaces within the driveway for a total of 232 spaces. They are just showing 8 guest spaces within the development. As I mentioned on the other application, again, this is in the North Point overlay, so we do have open space requirements, 5% amenity space and 10% civic space, total of 1.1 acres of open space. The applicant site plan actually shows 2.86 acres of open space, or 39%. They've got an exhibit showing the difference between the civic space and amenity space. So the green areas would represent the civic space, and the pink areas would represent the amenity space. This buffer actually would even count. They don't show it as green, but that would count toward amenity space. They have a dog park located in this area, which that dog park should be actually shown as amenity space. That would be for the residents only, not open to the public. But there is a walking trail through the buffer that comes and connects all the way down to Morrison. And that area, including the area that's not shown, would qualify as civic space. So they actually probably have more open space than what's shown on their site plan. That trail shown as a 6-foot trail. There is also on this plan, they show open space at the corner of Morrison and Hembry, and they are providing eco-district monument concepts similar to what you saw with the previous application. Again, there are 2 options, and a final approval would be subject to that Cultural Arts Commission. Go back to the site plan real quick. So there's stormwater management facilities shown behind these homes abutting the city's property. So it's internal to the site. You wouldn't see it from any of the public right-of-ways. As I mentioned before, this property has been previously cleared and graded, so there's a lot of smaller pines where it was cleared. These areas over here were not cleared, so mainly if you go to the property, the area that was cleared was in this general area. So there's not a lot of specimen trees on the property. There are, however, some up in these areas that were not previously cleared, and the applicant has identified 5 specimen trees that will be saved. The applicant provided renderings. These renderings are shown here. And this is a rendering showing how the townhomes would sit lower than, as I mentioned before, this property sits lower than Hembury and Morrison. So this just shows some of the landscaping that would be provided along Hembury. This is not a buffer like the other application. This would be a landscape strip, so more decorative and deciduous trees as opposed to evergreen trees. There, within the Cousins West Side Master Plan, there are requirements that units address the road. So that's why the applicant has added this porch detail, and we can go back to the rendering that shows that. So they've added the porch detail on the sides to give the presence of addressing the road where the units, the end units, butt up to the road. Again, as this is in the North Point overlay, there are 7 eco-district points required for this development. The applicant is proposing a total of 11 points. Building energy efficiency, bioretention, and sustainable landscaping, enhanced bicycle amenities, and additional landscape civic space. So they're exceeding their civic space, so they can take credit for the additional landscape civic space. And I do believe Eric has a traffic presentation.
This development located off of Hembury Road is anticipated to generate 26 vehicle trip-ins during the PM peak hour. The applicant has engaged A&R Engineering to prepare a traffic impact assessment to determine the impacts to the city's street network. The study found that the development to have little impact on the existing roadway operations, but did provide recommendations to install a right turn lane based on Georgia Department of Transportation guidelines. Based on the volume of traffic along Hembury Road, however, staff is recommending the applicant develop a left turn lane at the driveway. This recommendation also enables a left turn lane for the opposing driveway, enhancing safety at both intersections. Public Works has also identified Hembury Road for a potential road widening in the future. At this point, I do not believe it has a funding source, however.
Thanks, Eric.
I do have an exhibit of what the applicant did prepare, a left turn lane exhibit, and so essentially they extend the left turn bays at Maxwell as well as at Morrison Road to create a left turn space at the driveway. We would probably go ahead and stripe this as a flush median or a two-way left turn lane so that you provide both driveways sufficient access. Thank you.
We did show the applicant's proposal to the public at the community zoning information meeting on October 13th. There were no public comments at that time. Excuse me. Staff looked at the various review criteria and found that this proposal is consistent with the comprehensive plan policies as well as the North Point overlay, promoting walkability, green space, and a mixed-use environment in the North Point area. Proposals should not adversely affect the natural environment. In fact, they're taking advantage of the natural spaces on the property, and the residential use would produce significantly fewer vehicular trips than the office that's approved for the property. With respect to the requested variances, the property does have an unusual shape. It does have multiple road frontages, and there are some stream buffers, floodplains, and wetlands present that limit the property. If approved, the new internal streetscape should match the applicable staff condition, and I'll detail that in the staff conditions. Staff is recommending approval of the applicant's request subject to several conditions. One is the site plan specific condition, tying it to the site plan prepared by PEC revised October 11th, 2021. Two, the comprehensive land use plan designation of the property shall be high density residential. 3, dwelling for sale attached shall be listed as a permitted use in the Cousins West Side Master Plan Pot A with a maximum density of 7.89 dwelling units per acre. 4, Hembry Road shall have a maximum building setback of 50 feet, and Morrison Parkway shall have a maximum building setback. And that's, the current condition in your packet does say 70 feet. I've acknowledged that the site plan does show 100 feet, and there is the frontage along Morrison Parkway is very limited, and we are okay with the staff's change to that to 100 feet. I will go through those conditions if you'd like after I'm done reading staff conditions. Condition 5 addresses the architecture and material that was submitted by Troy King, labeled Exhibit A, subject to final approval by staff. Townhome side elevations facing Hembry Road shall have a minimum 4-foot deep porch and other details depicted on the submitted renderings as approved by staff. 6 deals with the eco-district points as indicated in the applicant's letter of intent. Condition 7 addresses the 5,000 square foot civic space at the corner of Morrison Parkway and Hembry Road and requires that the eco-district monument concept be placed in that location subject to approval by the Cultural Arts Commission. Condition 8 outlines the open space as depicted on the site plan by PEC dated 10/11/2021. Condition 9 addresses the stormwater management facility having a natural appearance. Condition 10 addresses privacy fences and unfinished wood decks not being visible from the public right-of-way. Condition 11 requires that the townhomes have connectivity to the public sidewalk system. Condition 12, units 1 through 4 shall have a minimum 18-foot long driveway, not including the required sidewalk. There was a previous plan that the applicant has since updated that showed a sidewalk going across those 18-foot long driveways, which actually reduced the length of the driveway. The sidewalk cannot be included in the driveway length. Condition 13 addresses the new internal street. So there was some concern about the amount of guest parking since these are 3-bedroom units. We acknowledge that there are 2 spaces in the garage, 2 spaces in the driveway, but there are only, I believe, 8 guest spaces throughout the development. So we're saying the new internal street shall be improved with a 9-foot travel lanes and 8-foot parallel parking on one side of the street to add additional guest parking, including the minimum 4-foot planter and minimum 5-foot sidewalk on one side of the street. There is a provision here with regard to the 10-foot landscape strips on both sides of the street. However, as we discussed on the previous application, we have had some recent issues with Fulton County requiring unencumbered easements. We would be amenable to a change with respect to that language, but we would not be amenable to change on the 8-foot parallel parking. Condition 14, alleys and driveways adjacent to Hembry Road shall be heavily screened with a decorative wall and/or decorative screening landscape material as approved by staff. So where these alleys dead end along Hembry. 15, where appropriate, 5-foot side and rear setbacks along the north and east property lines and around the city-owned parcel shall include the required 5-foot landscape strip with final approval by staff. Condition 16 requires saving specimen trees, trees of qualities, and tree groupings within that 50-foot natural buffer along the north property line. Condition 17 addresses the 16-foot pervious trail that runs through that natural buffer as well as on the east side of the property, as shown on the applicant's site plan by PEC, revised 10/11/21. Also requiring elevated trail sections through the wetland and stream crossings. And then, of course, providing for public access through that trail. Condition 18, developer shall dedicate any necessary right-of-way along Hembry and Morrison Parkway to accommodate streetscape improvements, future road improvements. We had a discussion with the applicant today about that, and Eric indicated that we didn't need right-of-way on those streets. Condition 19, developer shall provide a center left turn lane on Hembry at the project entrance as approved by staff. Condition 20, project entrance shall have a divided median planted with decorative landscaping as approved by staff. Condition 21 addresses removing exotic and invasive trees and shrubs within the stream buffers. Again, a typical condition when you have stream buffers on the property. Condition 21, elevation certificates shall be required for townhomes adjacent to floodplain. 23, stormwater pond dam shall not be within the sanitary sewer easement, and sewer pipe shall not encroach into the pond dam. This is something that was discussed with the applicant today. There's actually not a dam there, it's a wall. We would be amenable to the applicant's change on that. Condition 24 addresses the specimen tree saves, and condition number 25 limits the number of units that could be rented to no more than 10%. And that concludes the staff presentation, unless you would like me to address staff's feelings on the applicant's conditions. So we would be accepting of all the applicant's requested changes except for the change to 13.
All right. Makes it very simple. I have a question regarding the stormwater management facility. Is the city-owned property, I was trying to figure out where the wetland limits are. Is it what is shaded?
Actually, the applicant did provide an exhibit that more clearly, believe it calls out the wetlands. If not, I may need them. We may need to ask the applicant for more clarification on that.
Okay. The reason I was asking that question is the sizing of that stormwater management pond, and I would assume that they had modeled the existing current condition and future, and I ask that question when the applicant comes up. So we can hold that until then. Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, Michael, I've got a quick question. We talk about on condition number 17, the 6-foot trail. And then it talks about how it, public access easement over that trail. Where's the maintenance of that trail?
The HOA would have maintenance of that trail.
So do we need to spell that out, or is that, I'm just curious. These trails always seem to be neglected.
We should specify that.
I just feel like we need to make sure, because that top right corner is so far away from the property itself. You know, I feel like it's kind of.
So we do address that at the end of condition 8. I do agree. I agree with you. We probably should have included that condition 17 closer to condition 8 or within condition 8. But if you look at condition 8, we talk about a permanent easement shall be dedicated to the city for public access over required civic space. The HOA shall be responsible for maintenance of all open space.
Do you feel that covers that?
Including improvements within that open space.
Okay, so I was just.
If you would like to
tie-
clarify in
No.
17, it's not going to hurt.
No, if you feel it's covered in that one, I just wanted to be sure. Thank you.
Michael, can you just quickly go over your opposition to 13?
Yeah, so the requested change to 13 would eliminate that 8 foot for parallel parking on one side of the street, which we are in opposition to because we just don't feel that there is sufficient guest parking within this, being these would be 3-bedroom units. If you have 2 parents with a car with a child, potentially for 3 cars, if you have guests, the driveway quickly gets filled up. and then you're needing guest parking, and there's only 8 here. So the idea was, we felt that there was sufficient, and the applicant, of course, would need to respond to this for you, but we felt like they were showing a, I believe, 24-foot road here. If you had 2 9-foot travel lanes plus the 8-foot for the on-street, that gets you to 26 feet. The on-street parallel parking can actually encroach into that 4-foot planter that is between the road and the sidewalk, so that we thought that there's sufficient space there. You still are meeting the planter because there will be, at the ends of the parallel parking, there will be areas where you can plant trees within the planter, and we just felt that that would be a benefit to this community. So that's the main opposition to the change. In condition 13, as I mentioned, we would be open to a change to staff's language that talks about the 10-foot landscape strip on both sides of the street as a result of the Fulton County unencumbered easement.
Gotcha. Thank you.
This is kind of a question relating to condition number 6 for the eco district points. So I probably am just missing it, but this enhanced bicycle amenities points, where is that located on the map?
I don't know that it's specifically addressed. I was looking for that. It was addressed on the applicant's site plan on the other project. I don't recall being able to specifically see those locations. However, I will say that in most applications with Eco District, it's not always the exact location detailed on the site plan. It would be something that would be worked out with staff during the land disturbance permit process.
Okay, sure.
But the applicant may have more information on that.
And I have one final question for Eric. So I made the mistake of trying to go down this road when school was getting out. It was a nightmare, and I'm very glad that that's a Roswell problem and not an Alpharetta.
Yes.
It was scary dangerous. So I'm very happy you came with some proposed turn lanes into this property. I know that you said that this widening, or this section of widening, is on a wish list, but no funding. So do you feel that if that does happen, which to me seems to be highly needed, that this could accommodate, I mean, this isn't going to restrict that opportunity?
This doesn't really restrict the opportunity,
Okay.
no.
And then my last kind of traffic related is we do show, it looks like a sidewalk, but I wasn't really clear. Is that a sidewalk on Morrison Parkway in front of the property going towards the FedEx?
Yes.
And is that going to eventually connect to like the new development on the corner of Morrison and?
That is the goal, yes.
Okay, so they'll have the sidewalk that was just finished in front of Honda on that side, and then they'll be able to cross the street and use that for now to get all the way.
And if there's opportunities, we always like to look and see if there's opportunities to, you know, to pay the developer to extend their work, you know, for impact fee credits.
Okay.
If I could follow on traffic-related questions. I spend a lot of time on Hembry, going over to the Public Works Building a lot too, and there's quite a bit of heavy truck and specifically cement mixer traffic along that route. I'm a little concerned about line of sight. Were there line of sight studies for this particular driveway location?
We typically look at that more detailed during land disturbance permit, but I believe that we'll be able to accommodate that with the sidewalk and the frontage improvements that will be occurring.
Okay. It's the heavy truck traffic that would give me a little heartburn about that location.
Yeah, speed controls are our biggest concern with those type of issues.
All right, any further questions for Michael? All right, we're going to ask the applicant to come forward and make a presentation.
I'm still Kathy Sickert, and I still represent Empire. Kelly, could you just pull up the site plan? Again, Mike did such a thorough job, and it's late, so I don't want to belabor the points here, but what I do want to do is to go through our concerns about 13 and explain to you why we have them, And additionally, to discuss a little bit further whether there might be a change made to number 18 in light of the comments that were just made. I'm going to let Ken address the floodplain question in terms of where it's located, because I'm just not qualified to do that. But let me briefly go through this. And let me also mention that this area, notwithstanding also being part of the Cousins West Side Plan, has developed largely as townhome communities. I mean, there's 4 or 5 within a mile radius of this site. So this is certainly something which is consistent with its surroundings and has been very well received in the past. Have you got that up there for me? Are you connected in the right place? There you go. Okay. All right. The driveway or where the location of the parallel parking spaces are supposed to go would be on the entrance road. And effectively, I believe, would be on the right side of that entrance road. It's not clear to me how many spaces you could get. Obviously, you're not going to be parking directly at the entrance because you don't want a conflict between cars turning into that street and the parallel parking being right there. So I suspect the actual parking spaces would probably have to start somewhere in the vicinity of the units and then move up that street. Our concern is simply that in order to do that, we are going to have to smash into the landscape strip to such a significant degree that effectively we might as well put it on the other side of the sidewalk. And if you were willing to consider that as an option, then that might be able to be accomplished at that location. But what we are suggesting at this point in lieu of that is to figure out how many parallel parking spaces we would get there and see if we can locate them elsewhere in the community. For example, there are a number of what I would call double-loaded townhomes, rows that face each other, 2 rows, which is true pretty much all the way down on the ones on the bottom or to the southern part of the site. It may be possible to place some parallel parking spaces at the end of those rows. And if so, we would prefer to put them there rather than in the entrance roads simply due to interference with traffic. Also, maybe a possibility that we could work some more in between units. So this is something, again, that we have to continue to work with the staff, and I have the utmost confidence that we will be able to come up with something. But my suggestion for this evening is that if you know the number of additional parallel parking spaces you want us to provide and could maybe recommend that it be approved with that number, then we would have some flexibility between now and the time of the city council to get together with staff and figure out if there's any other place where we can locate them, or if there's a way that we can do it effectively on the entrance road so that there wouldn't be any kind of problem with the landscape strip and the like. So that is my response to the concerns on 13. I do know that obviously the staff and my clients get along very, very well, and we're very responsive to whatever they ask us to do. So I am confident that we will be able to come up with something, and I do recognize that it would be a good idea to add some more parking spaces here. So that is my suggestion on how to handle it at this point in time, with the clear and express understanding that we will get together and try and find those spaces before the city council. That's the first one. The second one is on number 18. Mike indicated that, or actually Eric indicated in response to his question, that there is no additional dedication of right-of-way along Hembry and Morrison Parkway. And if that's the case, my request is that you just strike that sentence, leave the one about the setbacks, but take the first one out. And the reason I ask for that is, although in the next 10 or 15 years, there might not be a funded project, 20 or 25 years from now, there could be. And I don't want at that point in time for the city to come to us, not that I think they would, not that you would be, well, maybe you'll be here then. I don't want the city to come to us and say, you committed to this and we now need 25 feet of right-of-way and you're going to have to lose units to give it to us. So my concern is the open-ended commitment to something that we don't even know what it's going to be. So for now, for purposes of this hearing, I am asking that that first sentence be stricken in an effort to avoid that situation occurring. If there were precise plans now, and I discussed this with the staff, we would be happy to commit to that kind of a right-of-way dedication, but we don't have them. So I need to walk a middle line between protecting the client and making sure the city gets what it needs. I don't have anything else to add in reference to the conditions, but I'm assuming you would like Ken to answer your floodplain question. Did you ask, who asked the floodplain question? Somebody did.
Wetland question. Is this stormwater management facility for water quality or for drainage control? Or both?
Kenneth Wood, 350 Research Court. So it's for both. If you're looking at the plan, I can't actually point to it, but directly behind the townhomes, that's where we'll have our stormwater management, and we have it. It's an above-ground pond that would have a wall, and essentially half of it would be runoff reduction, water quality, half of it would be stormwater management. We also have some different little areas in the pocket parks to where we're going to need to do, captures from roof drains and need to do little, basically infiltration areas. But the area owned by the city, when you go out there, it's basically it's almost like almost the whole thing is a wetland, and so it's quite an ecosystem in terms of treating water and how it sits today. So when you walk out there, it's kind of a swampy area. It looks like it was a breached stormwater pond, and so it's kind of very low. And so we're going to have kind of multiple phases kind of running through our project, up with the roof drains, down into the stormwater pond for water quality and detention, and then actually discharging into that area, which actually flows all the way across to the other side. And so by the time it actually leaves the project on the other side, it will be treated quite a few times.
The reason I asked that question was, is that stormwater management facility necessary?
We don't know yet, and so we would end up doing a study to see. And obviously, at the end of the day, though, we still have to protect the downstream, and so when we were looking at it on the upstream side, we don't know if there's a large enough basin to be able to, beat the peak by reducing and basically flowing out earlier from the stormwater pond. But we'll definitely do the study for that. But right now, it looked like, based on what it looked like, how much upstream volume and land area there was, that we would need to have some type of stormwater pond to hold back stormwater.
But you're only controlling what is coming out of your development, not what is coming from the, I don't use the word basin, I use the word contributing area. So you are trying to control what is within that development.
That's correct.
Entering into the wetland, which is a natural pest control facility.
Yes.
Yeah, the sizing of it is the one I'm questioning whether it's really necessary, but I understand your point.
Yes, for sure.
You determine that later.
Yeah, well, if approved, as we went through the permitting process, we would look at it as what we're treating on site in addition to all the infiltration areas on site, and then discharging directly into the wetland, and then how does that affect the wetland and the downstream system too? And so we'd have to run through both analysis.
Okay. I can guess that it's not necessary.
We're hoping, for
Have
sure.
a little experience in that regard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Floodplain. Where's the floodplain?
I mean, this is just probably not necessary, but I'm just curious, it seems large. This is not under Army Corps of Engineers oversight. It's not to that level at all, is it?
Well, so there's different little streams in the highlighted area on that plan is the city area, right? And so within the city area, you kind of see the hatched area that's solid. It's kind of that's the floodway, and so as it floods, it kind of runs through that different area. But there's sections within that area that are wetlands, so they are core regulated in terms of we can't touch them without paying impacts or anything, but we're not touching them. And there are a couple of stream segments, which we show on the other plan, and so those do have the buffers on them, and we would not be touching those either.
Okay.
And so there's nothing that we're doing on this plan that we would have to get with the Corps and get approvals from. Right now, we're not touching any of that land.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Are you finished with your presentation?
I am indeed.
All right, thank you. Anyone in the audience in favor, please come forward.
We had someone here who has the property across the street that will be directly across from our curb cut, who was in support of the application. He's been in conversation with Eric about those two needing to line up and some relief on Hembry as well. And unfortunately, he had a family emergency and had to leave. So he asked me if I would communicate that. His name is Charlie Slade. He happens to be a client, but he wasn't here tonight because I asked him to be. It was a surprise to both of us when we walked into the same room. So I just wanted to communicate that for him.
I can't stipulate, but I will stipulate that he did say that before he left. He has an emergency, but I cannot stipulate. Seeing no one in favor, anyone in opposition? None in opposition. Anything else you'd like to add? No, sir. I would turn this over to the board for discussion and/or a motion.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question of Eric? Back on the entrance, I drive up there, up on that road sometimes, and I agree, concur, there's a lot of truck traffic, a lot of cement mixers and stuff like that, and the traffic will back up right in the same intersection of where the Roswell recycling area is. Is that ever going to need a traffic light there? I don't think you're going to be able to turn left too easily out of that once it's done.
I wouldn't believe we'd need a traffic light, between Maxwell Road and West Side Parkway. There's nothing that's generating enough trips that would have enough consistent traffic that would hit the triggers for a traffic signal. Doing enhancements such as providing, left-hand turn lanes or a center median, do provide additional opportunities for folks to, get in and out of different, driveways a little bit easier. So I believe that should accommodate the majority of the need.
Can I ask Michael about number 13 and the applicant's concerns and your thoughts on that? I think it's 13. With the right of way. Yeah. Understanding it's hard to predict the future and what that's going to look like, and to lock them into something seems.
Are you referring?
A different one? Yes. Sorry.
I think, you're referring to
18. Thank you.
Condition 18, we're comfortable with striking condition 18 altogether. I don't even know that the applicant's language is needed there. If down in the future, a future project was identified that required right-of-way from this property, the setbacks, we would not require the applicants come forward to get variances from setbacks because of right-of-way taking. So we'd be fine with striking that altogether.
Thank you.
Following that question, I don't know how many owners are involved in the property across Hembry Road from it, so that if there was a need to acquire some right-of-way for a widening, they could go to that side of the road. I'm not even aware. Who is that? Who would own that?
This property here?
You're not on screen.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's where you see, it appears to be undeveloped at present.
Yeah, the undeveloped property,
Yeah.
that's the property that came before you with the liquor store not too long
Yes,
ago,
yes,
and
yes.
it was denied. So we are familiar with that particular property owner. I don't know, we've not heard from them if they have plans to move forward or not with anything on that property at this time, but it is undeveloped and there's potential there as well. But again, the current setback that's shown here is 50 foot. The townhomes are 50 foot off the road. So even if right-of-way was required, there's still sufficient. I mean, in the North Point overlay, we have, minimum and maximum, or maximum setbacks of 20 feet in some cases. So they'd still be compliant if there was some right-of-way taken there.
I guess I come from a place right now of great sympathy for people who live in properties that back up to McGinnis Ferry Road. That is, they're going through right-of-way negotiations for a significant widening project, and there will now be trucks, 30 feet off their back decks. So I was thinking forward on behalf of the applicant that the townhomes that would be directly impacted by a widening, if there's any protections you can think forward to including, would be great.
Yeah. And I think Eric looked at up with Public Works with their concept plan for widening Hembry. I think that's adding a lane in each direction. Is that right?
Correct.
And that would still be able to be accommodated within the existing right-of-way?
Their markup does show, you know, they have a sketch analysis right now, and that showed that it was mostly within the existing right-of-way. There might have been some minor right-of-way needs, but they weren't, it wasn't extreme or anything. It did not appear that there was going to be a whole lot of need, actually.
This is a very zoomed out sketch of all of Hembry with this, and I don't know how much I can really zoom in there to give you any kind of detail, and this is very conceptual. Oh, yeah, you had to, that's right. Let's,
So if I had to guess, it would look like maybe needing 10 feet?
Do you mind coming to the microphone?
If you all want to tie condition 18 to that plan, where we would dedicate whatever right-of-way is necessary for it, that's not giving me the heartburn I would have as if it was going way onto the property. So that's something that would be perfectly acceptable to us.
For the current proposed improvement. For the current proposed improvement or widening?
I would leave 18 as is, but tie it to this plan, that is what is Public Works is looking at to do, so that we know we will accommodate it, but without unlimited exposure to create a situation like you just described on McGinnis Ferry. Does that make sense?
Difficult to quantify, though.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
You could attach this as an
I was going to say, it's like a cocktail napkin sketch, isn't it?
I thought it was more defined than that.
Unless you want to specify specific width, which I don't know whether, Eric, you're able to provide such an estimate, but I am fine with striking
He had
the condition.
recommended just striking that,
Yeah,
number 18.
I would, yeah, do that.
It doesn't prohibit the city from coming back, and again, the applicant's site, it's likely to be very minor impacts, if at all, and they're still going to be compliant if there is a right-of-way taking with the setback.
All right, I think we are good with that. Now, you want to comment on the applicant's comments on 13 about parking?
So I think the site plan that was being shown to you on 13 was different than the site plan that we show here. So I was a little bit confused about, where we're at with regard to being able to accommodate this 8 foot of parallel parking. My preference is that the condition be left as staff recommends this evening, and the applicant has the opportunity to work on the site plan a little bit more and work with staff prior to city council to see if there is sufficient space for the on-street parking. We really do think that it's important. I don't have a specific number that I can bring to you this evening for additional guest parking spaces. I need to look at other similar 3-bedroom townhome developments. But my recommendation would be to leave as staff recommends for now.
Okay.
So, Michael, I definitely agree, and I can tell you by the overflow parking that we're seeing at Innovation Academy every night, I mean, there's a good 20-plus cars, and I think those are kind of similar size units, or at least with the same driveway constraints. So that was my first note, that there didn't seem to be enough parking for all 3 bedrooms.
Yeah.
So I would hope that we would take a closer look at that before the 15th.
So you're talking about people that live across the street or using that school as their off-site parking?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Is that an issue? Okay, I use it for, I mean, it's always so empty.
Well, I think, well, the driveways aren't being used as the 4, 2 in, 2 out, as this design lends itself. So there would be no easy answer here, creating parking on the street. We've seen that in other communities too.
Michael, what's the difference between smart and green stormwater? I'm just curious.
I think it's just what the applicant felt more comfortable with. We refer to it as smart stormwater design in our code. That's why we use that word. But the intention is like green type infrastructure. I don't know if you have anything that you want to elaborate on it, Eric, but I think we're generally saying the same thing.
Okay.
I would agree.
Yeah.
And then the only last question I have is the last line of condition 13. They had done a additional sentence, at least 2 parking spaces, blah, 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 blah. Are you okay with that one?
Again, I just got that today, and I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how that impacts, what that will look like on the site plan without seeing that. I would just prefer to leave as is and then work with the applicant and hopefully get a solution before council.
Yes. I would support that. Any further discussion, motions?
Mr. Chairman, if no other discussion, I'll make a motion. I make a motion to approve MP-21-09/CLUP-21-05/Fee-21-25 Henry Cousins West Side MP Empire Community, subject to the conditions as noted by staff, with the approval of the applicant's markups on item number 4, item number 9, item number 10, denying applicant's markup on item number 13 and leaving that as staff recommended, approving applicant's markup on item number 16, deleting the entire sentence/paragraph of item number 18, strike that from the markup and staff recommendation, and approving applicant's markup on item number 23, and of course, all the rest of the everything is noted by staff.
Second.
Motion has been made and properly seconded. Any further discussion?
Just clarification, 21, you're accepting applicant, correct?
21, I don't think, there was no,
No discussion, okay.
there was no denial by staff on number 21.
I have a friendly addition, and then
Please do.
on number 17, just to add the line, trail shall be maintained by the HOA, just to provide some open space and trail or.
Please read that back.
The last line, add a sentence, trail shall be maintained by the open space, HOA.
I'm going to continue my motion and have that added to number 17.
All right. Is that motion clear to everyone?
Yes.
All right.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries. It will be heard on November the 15th. We have one more item. Does the board desire to take a break or continue to the end?
Let's get it done.
Go and,
Get done.
Get it done.
All right.
all right.
Move along.
The fourth item is PH-21-18 Code of Ordinances text amendments, alcoholic beverages, distance requirements, and auxiliary tasting license. Ms. Cook, will you please?
Yes, thank you. This last item, the proposed text amendment to Code of Ordinances, Section 4-17, distance requirements, is is to prohibit a retail package store from being located within 2,000 feet of any other retail package store. And that's shown to you here. The reason that we did that is we actually found that there's state law that requires distance requirements of 1,500. So we didn't have that in our code. So people were kind of finding that after the fact when they went to meet the state requirements. But we decided that we would use 2,000. Yes, it is more than the state code requires of 1,500, but it matches everything we've done in other definitions within the UDC. So we're just trying to stay consistent with that. We also identified, you can see we added the red line, that the distance requirements, it doesn't apply. Public parks referred to herein shall include all public parks. However, the Alpha Loop and the Big Creek Greenway shall be excluded from that definition because, in other words, if we're building an urban trail through an area, it's going to be close to probably some of the restaurants, but we do consider it a park. So distance requirements for alcohol license shouldn't have to be measured from those trails, which are very similar in use to a sidewalk. So that is the one change, mostly just to be in compliance with, to match what the state requires. We also had some regulations that we are looking for a recommendation for an approval for text amendment to the Code of Ordinances, Section 4-1, to add a definition for craft beer. So, of course, craft beer is in the market, but we don't have a definition for that. So if you think about if you go to a wine store and they can have an ancillary tasting where you can try the wine, and they have wine bars also. We don't really have anything that's set up for craft beer. So you do have stores that just sell craft beer, but they also want to be able to have tasting similar to a wine store. So that's the regulations that we put together. We do not have a craft beer store. We don't have anybody looking to put one here, but we know that they exist elsewhere. So if we were making some of these changes, we might as well, put the definition in for craft beer.
I did not know what craft beer was, a new term for me.
Yes, so we put that definition in there. So that is the changes, and then of course it would increase tastings from 8 ounces to 16 ounces. And we looked at other jurisdictions, and some don't have a maximum on the tastings. But we felt like this putting a maximum in there with the 16. And the reason it says for tastings, and basically, if you go somewhere and you're having a wine tasting, they wanted the ability to, if you say, well, I like that particular glass, and you just want a glass, So that's the proposed changes. If you have any questions,
is everything then? Red's Liquor Store, as an example, it may be more than 2,000 feet away from Wills Park, but everything like that would be grandfathered in under this, right?
Right. If they have an existing license, it's grandfathered.
So we had that situation a couple months ago off Old Milton Parkway.
That's correct.
Is this retroactive back to that, or is that's?
And that one was denied.
Oh, it was, okay.
Yeah. So, it doesn't impact any existing licenses.
Oh, it doesn't currently?
No. If you have a license, it doesn't impact that. So if you're within 2,000 feet of another retail package store and you already have a license, it won't impact the existing license. It's for new licenses. Now, anybody that's already exists, they should be already following the state regulation of 1,500. So they would have already, so they would have already had to follow that.
But for the 2,000, they are grandfathered or grandmothered
Right, ours is just 2,000, which we believe is consistent with everything else we've done in other definitions in the Unified Development Code.
And we can be more stringent.
Yes, it's not less stringent, yeah.
So does it grandfather in if somebody was not in compliance right now but decided to sell it, then would they fall under the new, or would they be grandfathered in that location?
They would have to follow the 2000, and I don't know if that exists with anyone. But there's a regulation we also have within the alcohol ordinance that says you can have up to 6 months after a closing, but after that, then you would lose the rights. You would have to go back through the new requirements for alcohol licensing.
All right. Any further questions? What is the
Thank you.
desire of the board?
I'll make a motion to approve agenda item PH-21-18, the Code of City Alpharetta text amendments, distance requirement, and ancillary tasting, as presented by Kathy Cook.
Second.
A motion has been made and properly seconded. Any further discussions? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries unanimously. Any other item the board would like to discuss before we adjourn? The meeting is adjourned at 9:46 p.m.
I'm gonna go get a 16-ounce taste somewhere.
That's this.
And I will tell you, we're going to be, Lauren's